Ben and Curt till it hurts. I'm Ben.
And I'm Curt.
And we have a guest in the studio.
Woo!
Right? First guest.
First guest?
First guest. Pop that top.
What?
Who do we have in the studio today?
Today, we have a good friend of mine, Casey, a.k.a. Caveman, from the show Into the Cave. It's a podcast on iTunes, right?
Yeah, well, iTunes and everywhere else.
Yeah.
Anywhere you can hear a microphone and a podcast.
Cool.
But
Thanks for coming.
That is me. No worries, man. Anytime to run my opinion across people. You know what I mean?
This is going to be part 3 of We Bit Off Way More Than We Can Chew podcast.
Part 3? Maybe we'll break 4 hours this time. I don't know if you graph the trend
right,
of podcast lengths.
I am going to say right now, we are not going to be longer than last time, because that was bad. That was real bad.
I got to say, I got a lot of things.
That was 2 hours and 40 minutes of hell for me to edit.
Yeah. It was good. It was a good cast.
Yeah.
But it was a hellish to edit.
So we won't waste any time.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, what have you been doing for media stuff lately?
Well, so 2 weeks ago, I talked about Nier Automata.
Robot game.
Mm-hmm. Japanese action RPG, right? I have since beaten that game for the first time, but it does this thing, I guess, where you play it over and over again, right? Like, I think you're supposed to play it 5 times to get the complete story. Mm-hmm. So now I'm playing it through it the second time, playing as a side character.
Oh,
right?
really?
Same game. It's like the New Game Plus kind of thing. Same game, new character. You get some alternate views on some scenes and stuff. But the thing that I came to with that game is I just don't give a shit about the combat. So, like, at first there were these little chips you can plug in, little skills you can give yourself that's just like, all right, hold in the L button on your Xbox controller and the game will play itself. At first I was like, why would I want to use that? But now I'm like, I'm fucking tired of this game. Like, I want to find out what happens in the story. I could not give less of a shit about the strategy or the combat or anything. Like, maybe it's great, maybe it's terrible. I don't know. All I know is I don't want to play it.
Just gotta go through this 4 more times.
But I really care about the anime that's attached to the game, right? So, not a real anime, but it's anime style storytelling, right? So, yeah, I'm playing my way through my second run at that. I'm pretty excited about it. Like, I sound like I'm shitting on it a little bit. I'm pretty positive about that game. Like, a lot of people have given that game a lot of praise. But it's good. It's good. Nier Automata. Bought a new graphics card so it would run better.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
okay.
so that's the other
that's
thing
the
that
level.
I've done.
That's the level we're talking about.
That's
here.
the level we're talking about. Yeah,
You're upgrading your life.
I upgraded
to play this game.
Yep. I opened up my case. Had to clear out a ton of dust. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't run my computer all the time. Maybe it sucks in a lot of dust.
I don't think that has anything to do with it.
No? All right. Well, PC Dr. Curt.
You keep playing those games.
You know I'm going to. That's about it for me. What have you been up to, Curtis?
I have started playing The Witcher 3. It's okay.
All
right. I have my brother gave me his Xbox One because he never played it. So I have 12 games that I've never even played because he buys games that I don't really play, you know. So every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, I'll try Battlefield 4. And then I'm like, yeah, no, I don't like this just as much as I thought as I wouldn't like it. But I started The Witcher, and it's cool and it's fun. I'm enjoying it. The only thing that I don't like about it is, he told me it was really hard. So obviously I'm a dick, and I was like, that's because you suck at video games. This will be easy. And what he meant by hard is, it's very complicated. It very much reminds me of old PC games where they're just like, hey, there you go, figure it out.
Yeah.
Anytime you open a menu, they're like, oh, hey, real quick, alchemy. And you have to read 6 screens of I don't even know what any of this means yet. And then they're like, and then you can never see it again. So they don't introduce you to a few things at a time and oh, you're really good with that now. You can start learning this. They're like, nope, here are 2 swords. One is made of steel, one's made of silver. The steel one is for fighting bad guys, but the silver one's for fighting monsters. Don't fucking mix them up. Okay. And they just let you go. And you'll get quests, and it's like, you probably shouldn't try to do this till you're level 8. And you're like, why would you give it to me now? And then you try it, and you're like, no, I need to be level 8 to do that. That's fucking hard. But I'm still plugging away at it. The only other thing is I recently started... I never have done this, but I started redeeming all the UV codes that come on my Blu-rays. So because I wanted to be able to watch my Blu-rays but not have to like be near my Xbox. So I started doing that, and the only reason I'm saying this is because I just wanted to give a shout out to. I made a Facebook post about like, oh man, I started redeeming my UV codes, and one of our listeners, name of John, was like, hey, I got some that I've never used. Here you go. So he gave me some of his movies. So thanks, John. That's a subtle way of me just whoring myself. Like, hey, you want to get a shout out on the show? Send me those UV codes.
Send us anything. Send us codes for anything. You'll probably get a shout out.
Send us like a brownie or like, yeah, literally anything. You can send me a thing of bubbles. I'll be like, look what we got. It's fan mail.
Bubbles. Y'all can't see it, but the room's full of bubbles for the entire recording of.
And it's very bright in here now, so you can see the bubbles.
So bright.
Yeah. If those episodes from before sounded a little dark, it's because they were. I put new light bulbs in here. Now I can't even keep my eyes open. Anyway, Caveman.
Yeah.
What have you been getting in on lately?
As far as games, I recently crash coursed back into like Minecraft. And I was playing a lot of Stardew Valley before that. But really, I mean, I've been watching television lately, which is odd for me because I'm not usually a TV person. But I've been watching House of Cards like a motherfucker.
I've never watched that.
I've never watched it.
Don't know where it came from. I don't know why. It's a government drama. It's about well, I hope it's totally faked. Jeez. But it's super dramaed up. It's about it's got Kevin Spacey in it as the lead character.
Okay, I've seen
he
stuff
plays a
about
congressman. He works his way in through and around the government. Bunch of fucked up scenarios. It's hard to describe without getting super in depth in all the sabotage like right off the bat. So it's one of those things where I'd have to say like, if you think anything political is good, check it out. It's not super accurate, but it works.
Entertaining.
Entertaining is all hell. Dramatic is all hell. But still, nonetheless. Yeah, other than that, not a whole lot, man. I mean, the Minecraft and Stardew Valley are two things that are old enough where I just can't explain to people what that is.
I do want to point out that when you talk about getting back into Minecraft, you literally sound like a person who has like relapsed into drinking again. Yeah, I was bored one night and I just started playing Minecraft again. And now I can't fucking stop.
Off the wagon.
Yeah,
back into Minecraft.
What do you do? Because Minecraft at this point is like a creative tool,
essentially,
as much as a game.
Now
so
it's just Legos.
What do you do in Minecraft?
Adult Legos.
What's your game?
Yeah, no,
so
for me,
I
used to
boobies or something. Legos? What's
no,
going on in Minecraft?
Currently, right now, I mean, you can. Before I did a lot of pixel art, but now it's just I'm just making fortresses and castles and all that whatnot, and I use it as a way to not spend $400 on a Lego kit.
Yeah,
that's really all it is for me at this point.
It's like a Lego set, but then you can, like in the old like roller coaster tycoon games, where it's like I'm gonna build this coaster and then ride it. Now it's like in Minecraft, I'm gonna build this castle and then explore it and like walk around in it.
And then you can still build roller coasters in Minecraft.
Yeah, that
I
too.
hate how diverse that game is.
You can get crazy, man.
The redstone stuff that they do,
yeah,
nuts.
So with that came like a newfound like, I wonder how in depth I can really get, because before I played it and just fucked around with it, but I was like, I wonder how in depth it can get. Yeah, no, that went from like a fun little kid game to build blocks with to a full bore like you have to like get deep into the Wikipedia for it if you want to actually learn how most of it goes. It's interesting now. They added quite a bit from when I stepped away a few years ago. But for now, for me, it's mainly just creative. Nothing super crazy.
I have worked in schools for the past few years. So, like, I was working with middle schoolers, 6th graders. And the way that they get into Minecraft is nuts.
Yeah.
Right? They get so into it. And then it seems like they exhaust the possibilities of Minecraft. And then they're, like, searching on YouTube, Minecraft videos. Wait, you can build a calculator?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what happened to me.
Suddenly, like, the next Bill Gates is fucking making a little early PC in Minecraft and learning all about how coding works, and not just coding, but, like, the actual machinery of it. And
that's what happened, I mean, on a smaller scale to me, especially because, like, I'm not super smart, so it's just, like, I'm reading about how real life batteries work so I can learn how to make shit on my like. Why is this so fucking hard? And then I'm reading a book about how to like charge things with redstone,
logic gates and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
awful.
I can talk to a 6th grader about and or gates and like what. I don't think that's even a real
jeez.
fucking logic gate. I just fucked that up so bad. I used the one combination of those words that is not a real
That
logic
wouldn't work,
gate.
but even so.
I'll edit it out.
Thanks.
No.
Can you edit? Can you like reverse it so you can like
Yeah.
or it's
Just, all you need to do is just say each word individually, and then I'll put it together for you.
your pal.
I can't wait till this goes up and you sound awesome.
Corrections and omissions, man. I have a couple corrections from last time.
Oh, do you want to do that before we start?
Well, okay, let me get one out that really bothered me when I was... So, last time, I kept referring to Ichi the Killer as being, like, the reference point for the whole Japan section, just because that's, like, the one hyper-violent Japanese movie that I know. And I kept calling it a 90s movie. That movie came out in 2001. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Corrections and omissions.
Okay.
That
From the corrections department.
My conscience is cleared.
Did you lose sleep over that?
I haven't slept since.
Fair
Since
enough.
I figured it out.
Okay. All right. Fair.
Yeah.
So, to get right into the meat of today's episode, we're back discussing Quentin Tarantino's filmography. Today we're going to be talking about Inglourious Basterds, Django Unchained, and the Hateful Eight.
Finishing it out.
Finishing it out, except for our little... And, yeah, we'll be finishing the filmography.
Yeah.
Next episode is going to be, thank God, the final Tarantino. You know what I got to say, though? I just said that. I don't regret any of this.
I love this. Yeah. This has been like a blast. I'm so happy.
We should just do a
this.
Tarantino podcast.
Right?
You could.
We probably could. I've already got new shit to say about like Reservoir Dogs since watching.
Maybe
the
we
rest
can get
of
Quentin
stuff.
on.
Dude,
There you go.
you're joking.
Quentin cast.
looked
I
up-
have the draft.
I looked up
just
his
need to click
agent.
send.
Yeah.
So anyway, should we just start with Inglourious Basterds?
Let's just jump right in.
Let's just do it.
Inglourious Basterds. Now, Cave. This was.
Oh, do I leave that or?
was this or was this not the reason? This, as far as I remember, when Curtis told me that we would be having a guest, this was the movie.
Oh, for
that you
me,
said like whenever you talk about
the
Bastards, I want to be on that podcast.
Oh yes. Inglourious Basterds for me kind of goes back because growing up I wasn't too around anything super violent. So Quentin Tarantino kind of didn't hit my repertoire for a while. And then that was the first one. I think it came out, what was it, 2010-ish? 2009? Okay, so 2009. So that was about the time when the E's came up for me. I was somewhere around middle school, maybe a little older, maybe young high school. So I saw that.
Christ, how old are you?
Yeah.
Very young. A lot younger than you guys. 23.
Okay, all right. What?
I was in college.
Yeah?
yeah, I was in college too.
Shit happens.
Oh, jeez.
However, so for me, it was a big, see, and that gives you perspective as to why that movie meant something to
like
me.
that's perfect for middle school.
So I hit about whatever age that was, and I was just like, I just watched a bunch of Nazis get murdered by a bunch of badass American soldiers, so this is my life now. And then from there, I kind of started understanding more and more of how World War II went, realized that movie was awesome, badass satire for America, and fell in love. And I think that's from there is kind of what got me more and more into everything else Quentin Tarantino, because shortly thereafter I watched Pulp Fiction. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like it's a good movie, and B, it's almost like a remembrance of when I got into that style movie.
Your entry.
You always remember your first.
Yeah. As much as you want to, anyway.
I think they're talking about Tarantino when that phrase became a thing. I think that you always remember your first.
I think so.
Tarantino movie.
For the most part, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so how do we want to start tackling Inglourious Basterds?
Well, it's been very disorganized in our past episodes. We've mostly just like jumped in and started reciting lines that we like. I'm pretty sure.
So what you're saying is we don't have much to live up to.
Yeah, right. We've got a pretty low bar. Interesting fact about Inglourious Basterds that I learned: he considered publishing it as a novel.
Yeah, you know what?
And you know what? That almost would have worked better.
In many ways, it's his most novelistic movie.
Yeah,
I would say.
I think he also did that for Django, or maybe it was Hateful Eight. I think
Hateful Eight at one point.
Django ended up as written out, but
yeah. Hateful Eight was leaked, and then
Right.
canceled it, and then they did like a staged reading of it with the full cast, a couple different cast members, but mostly I believe it was the same cast and that guy. So that might be what you're thinking of there.
Yes,
and Hateful Eight, I'm sure at some point he said, maybe I'll just do it as a play, because he kind of does that with new projects that he's working on.
Most movies.
Yeah, it's always like, well, I don't know, maybe this is going to be a podcast, maybe this is going to be a book, maybe this is going to be a movie. It always ends up being movies. I don't know why he keeps saying it.
I don't know why he's bothered.
He fucking loves making movies, I guess.
So, I will say, this is how I'll try to get the the ball rolling. I think every time I watch Inglourious Basterds, I think I like it a little bit less.
Why is that happening? Can you stop that from happening?
Can you fix your brain?
Can you fix your brain?
Okay, so and I think the reason, there are a few things that are about this that I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Okay, so when Inglourious Basterds came out, it hadn't been. It was still a fan theory that Quentin Tarantino's movies all took place in this fictional universe.
Yep.
So the whole time I was watching Inglourious Basterds, my thought was like, okay, like, what's the twist gonna be? Like, what's gonna happen? You know, this isn't how Hitler dies, so what's gonna happen?
Wait, what?
Like,
That's not how Hitler died?
It's up for debate.
Sure, yeah.
So you're like, okay, so what's gonna go wrong? When's it gonna go wrong? And then it doesn't go wrong, and the whole theater explodes and burns to the ground, and that basically ends World War II. And so I think seeing that was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen, because you just, the whole time, you're like, well, obviously they're not going to do that, because that's not what happened. And then, lo and behold, hey, my universe is its own thing.
There's a lot of that in Django, too, that we're going to get to.
So I think, for me, that's part of it, is that once you know, it's kind of like the ultimate twist movie, Sixth Sense. Once you know the ending, you can still watch the movie and enjoy it, but you're never going to get the same power that you had the first time you watched it. I think that's part of it for me. Thoughts?
I guess I just experience it differently from you.
Okay.
It's almost like I'm a different person.
I've had different things that led up to me watching that
thoughts,
film, and it impacted me.
A different set of life experiences. Because for me, I've never, like I know it's fun to, like, talk about, but I've never bought too much into the whole, like, the unified Tarantino verse.
Okay.
So I approach it
So
as
when I
its
talk
own
about it
movie.
like it's gospel, you're not quite on the same page.
I kind of
Okay.
daze out. I start looking at,
Okay.
at Cave's microphone.
Okay.
You know,
Just admiring that goddamn
admiring how
microphone.
beautiful it is.
Cave had to bring his own mic today, so if his sultry voice sounds way better than ours,
Hello.
it's kind of because he has a sick
I
mic.
just heard his sultry voice in my ear,
That
and
was
like
nice.
I can't figure out how anyone's gonna hear our voices and not just like start projectile vomiting compared to that.
We need nicer stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I like our stuff.
Yeah, we have stuff.
It's
Yeah,
good
good
stuff.
stuff.
Stuff is good.
The way I experienced and continue to experience Inglourious Basterds, and as with any other Tarantino movie, for me it's kind of a gradual unfolding of meaning, right? At this point, the way I see it is like it's almost an anthology. It's almost like a set of separate stories. It's his most Pulp Fiction-y movie,
Yeah.
other than Pulp Fiction in that way. In that the 5 chapters, each of the 5 chapters is so distinct, and each of them works so well on their own that it's just a smorgasbord, right? It's like it's a festival of delights going in there, and it's like, oh, now I get to meet the villain. You meet the villain in the very first chapter, and then second chapter you get like this gory kind of take on propaganda, right? Of like this is the bastards are like the perfect propaganda tool, right? They themselves are propaganda in a way.
Yeah.
And when you watch them contrasted in that last bit against the film on the screen, the nation's pride, it's just a fascinating, like, so those characters capture me in the second part. And then in the third chapter, you've got Shosanna coming back. I never even, first time I watched it, I didn't realize she was the same girl from the beginning.
Oh.
Until Wanda walks in.
Shit.
okay.
And she has that reaction. So I didn't.
Okay.
So I always kind of have like a remnant of that thing in the back of my mind, is like just the shock of that moment. As shocking as it feels to her when she hears Wanda walk in
Yep.
and hears his voice and thinks back to that horrible experience that she had. I have some semblance of that feeling, that just complete surprise and like paralyzing fear.
Yeah.
Fourth part, of course, is that incredible scene in the tavern. The plan that wasn't that great because it was like come up with by a movie star and a bunch of not super smart dudes.
Right.
That scene is something else too.
And it opens with that great like exposition parody with the suave spy who also happens to be a film critic, like the thing that has never happened before in the world, a suave film critic. I'm stealing that line from somebody. I can't remember who, but credit where credit is due. That's not an original idea.
Next week when we have the corrections.
Yeah, I'll be like, who said that? Let's find out. And then the last part, it all comes together.
Right.
So you have that little lull before the storm, where it's almost like a Reservoir Dogs or Hateful Eight style setup in Chapter 4. You know, it's almost like a stage play that you could just watch on its own, like a one act, right?
Yep.
It has like its own beginning, middle, and end, and its own little story, and then you jump back in. All the characters from the first 3 chapters all come together in that movie theater. So that to me, also, anyone who hasn't seen Inglourious Basterds, there's a summary for you.
Yeah.
I realize I just kind of trod over all that material.
I think we're past the point of having to say spoiler alerts.
Yeah, I think people should recognize, like, we're not trying to set you up to watch these. But yeah, that to me is what Inglourious Basterds is. It is such a tight and novelistic story that I just can't help but love it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I agree with. Because I'm with you. I mean, against Curt with the whole. I love that movie, and I think that one of the big things for it that I love is it has one of the most cinematic, one of the biggest, like, most impressive cinematic, like, coming full circle moments, which is what you're talking about with the whole at the farm, the very first beginning when you're meeting your villain right off the bat. They're sitting there with the milk scene the first time. He says, "This is a dairy farm, isn't it? Milk." That scene alone, you're sitting there, you know so much more than the main characters do. You know so much that's about to happen. Then when they're running away, you go, oh shit, where's this movie going to take me? I bet you don't know that about an hour later, you're going to be sitting in, like you were saying, sitting in the diner, having him say, you know, I want milk. And then the face that she makes when she just, like you're saying, when she notices, like, holy shit, my past has come back again. Yeah. It's a chilling moment.
It's great because I want to talk about Shosanna. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll go kind of character by character. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah. I will, but before we start that, that's kind of a good place for me to say my other, I guess, kind of big criticism for me of the movie. And that is, I feel like we don't get to know almost any of the characters as well as I would like to have gotten to know them. So as we touch each character, I can probably point in why I wish, you know, what I wish I knew or feel left out on. So anyway.
Shosanna is a character. I did some supplemental reading of reviews from the time and things like that. No reviews talk about Shosanna. People don't seem
unsettling.
People don't seem to see
she's
Shosanna.
Considering
She's probably, for my money, the main character of that movie.
Yeah.
At least of half of it, anyhow.
Yeah. And one of the reviews that I did see that actually mentioned Shosanna mentioned her in the capacity that they said she kind of just drifts away. They said that she felt like not a complete character. She felt like she didn't... I think what they were saying was similar to what you were saying, Curtis, that they felt like they never got to know her. And I think that can be true, but I think that the reason that it's true is one of the greatest touches of this movie is that Shosanna behaves realistically in every scene that she's in. Many of the scenes that she's in, she doesn't say much. She's kind of sitting there observing what's happening. The only time when you feel like you actually... Well, I mean, I don't want to talk for you guys, but the only time when I personally feel like you actually see who Shosanna is when she's talking to Marcel. In those moments.
Yeah,
when you see... So, like we said, you see the fear dawning on her face when she hears Londa, but by the time she finds out what the whole plan is with her theater, and she's talking to Marcel again...
Yep.
You realize that fear has gone in, processed through her brain, and she sees it as an opportunity. Yeah. Like an opportunity to get bloody vengeance. She has a revenge story that, to me, is on a level with The Bride in Kill Bill.
That's one thing I like. This whole, it follows the theme, the Tarantino theme. Get your revenge, motherfucker.
Revenge. You deserve it. Even if it would not have been possible in the real world, in the world of cinema,
Yeah.
People deserve their revenge,
Yeah.
right? These little dreams that we're all projecting onto the wall of, like, popular cinema. Certain groups deserve to have their revenge. Certain individuals representing certain groups deserve to have their revenge. And certain people deserve to get killed in really, really nasty ways.
I liked Shosanna a lot, and even one of the characters that I had written that I wish we had gotten to know better was Marcel, because he's very intriguing to me. Like you really feel from the limited amount of time that Shosanna and Marcel spend together, like you believe that they're in love and that they are committed to this. And I kind of just wish they had I wish he had just been in it a little more or kind of explored that. And I think maybe I'm being too bold, but I think that with some of my problems with not knowing the characters enough is that if you knew them more, the things that happen in the movie wouldn't make sense. And the first thing I want to say about that is Shosanna and Marcel don't get much screen time, but you believe they're in love, you believe their cause to burn down the theater. But obviously, I can never speak to the horrors of being a Jewish person living in Nazi Germany. But I did think about for the first time when I watched this time, I thought about that. I was like, wow, for these two people that are that in love, granted, I know it's a Tarantino movie, I was just thinking, it's kind of strange that, she could get away with this. She just needs to watch the movie and have it be gone and have them leave. But the past, her whole life, which granted might be a good point because she was living under floorboards and then her family was murdered, and now, 15 years later. But the way they put her in the movie, her whole life is a catalyst for this revenge on Nazis, where I think if you had explored her character more or explored Marcel more, you would have found more things for them to want to live for, mainly each other, than just killing themselves for the sake of killing all these Nazis.
And ending the war.
And
that's the thing that, to me, that's the thing that raises it above kind of like a Shakespearean, Romeo and Juliet, almost kind of we'll sacrifice ourselves and so on. The fact that they're killing all of the upper echelons of the Nazi party.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense in a sense of real world sense,
right?
But it makes movie sense.
That's especially it makes Tarantino sense.
Definitely makes Tarantino sense.
Revenge is obviously the most important thing. Don't be an idiot.
Yeah, don't get your values mixed up. If you have a reason to get revenge, that's number one priority.
Arguably, though, you could put it in the aspect of this. So take away any background from the two characters. Say they're just two random fucking citizens. Say she didn't even live on the goddamn farm, right? And she's just from Germany. It would still kind of suck to have Nazis take your country over. I think I'd probably give my life up too, knowing,
For sure.
like you were saying, the war's over. You take out essentially the Third Reich. I mean, is there much left at that point? You have all the higher-ups, Hitler, everyone big. So it's a random. Okay, I'm a taken man, and a random woman could walk up to me and be like, hey, you, me, let's go die. And the whole world is a better place. I might do it.
And that's fair. And I would never, ever want to be was it really that bad? Did you really need to kill yourself? I would never want to say
melodramatic. No, for sure. But I just play devil's advocate for a moment.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. And one of the weird things about that scene as well is that there are two separate suicide bombings going on in that theater. There's Shosanna's and there's the Bastards also do not have a plan to escape.
No, they're just we're gonna blow it up, I guess.
It's worth it. All the Nazis have combined themselves into one building. Of course we're gonna take this opportunity.
And that was one of the things I noticed also for the first time on this viewing. The two bastards that had the bomb strapped to their legs in the bottom floor. I was like, holy shit, they died. They didn't get out.
Yeah, no.
No.
Well, I think for them, it's you've seen everything. How are you going to go back to America and be normal? After being the Inglourious Basterds. Fuck it, go out in a vein of glory, man. I can see it.
Again, it doesn't make real world sense.
No, it's Tarantino.
It makes Tarantino sense.
Yeah, I let go of the real world when I watch a Tarantino
Yeah, it's
film.
like you kind of have to... It's not even like suspending your disbelief. It's like suspending your real world morality and ethics and replacing it with something that looks almost like real world morality and ethics, but it's just a little bit off. Like we mentioned, revenge is way heightened in the Tarantino kind of ethical system, and like, it's when you kind of let go of your real world predispositions and allow it to overtake you, it's an arresting feeling.
I think as far as some of the other characters, as far as not getting to know them as well as I would like. But I'm so torn, because I say I don't think we know them as well as I'd like to, but then at the same time, like I said, if you know them more, some of it wouldn't work. Like, as far as the Bastards go, you don't really know that much about the Bastards. Like, you know enough to be on their side, and they're funny,
Right.
But then again, at the same time, I feel like if you knew them too much, if they were more than those propaganda, it wouldn't work as much or as well as it does. And I feel that same way about Hans, too. It's just like, right at the beginning, you know he's a bad guy. They call him the Jew Hunter. Jew Hunter.
Nailed it in one.
And, like, you don't really get to know him other than the fact that he's despicable and you hate him. And I'm like, I wish they had kind of explored that a little bit more. But at the same time, you wouldn't want a villain like, say, Darth Vader, where you explore it and then you become sympathetic.
You
find out what happened to Hans Landa in his youth that made him hate the Jews so much.
You don't know why.
There's
you
no
just hate them.
I think I love the character of Landa. I think he's a really unique and interesting character in terms of as a comment on history and as a comment on the way that we have remembered the Nazis. I think Landa is really important in that way, because I think a lot of people, particularly people who don't hate Nazis as much as they should, start to think like, well, there were like the really bad ones, right? But then there were the ones that were just bureaucrats, right? A lot of people were just bureaucrats in the Nazi party and they weren't really evil. I love Landa because he is an evil bureaucrat.
Yeah.
He almost uses the bureaucracy as like a justification for what he's doing. He's like, well, I'm following all the rules that have been set out in front of me. I'm following the procedure very precisely. Now let's kill all these Jews, right? He is the evil bureaucrat, which is a character that I haven't seen in many other movies. I think it's kind of a unique little Tarantino spin on the villain in a Nazi film. That moment when he goes to choke Bridget is like his mask comes fully off. And you see like the animalistic hatred that it has and is deep down inside. You see it a little bit in that opening scene, like when he's talking to the farmer and he's talking about they've gotten to the point in the English conversation where his face just darkens. Landa's face darkens. And he says, point to where they are. They're under the floorboards.
Yeah. The other great ability of Christoph Waltz in that is they show, I'm sure there's some symbolism, but I'm just not smart. Anytime, you pointed out, when he's drinking the milk, anytime in that movie that he is eating or drinking, I just want to throw up. Like, they are so... Tarantino loves to do, like, that's one of his tropes, is, like, the close-up of a certain food or something, and, food or drink, and when Christoph Waltz is drinking that milk or eating that pastry with the cream on top, it just...
cut.
Literally turns my stomach, because there's so much tension in the room and in the scene.
And he's just enjoying himself.
And he's just eating delicious, treats,
puff.
or having a nice glass of cold, thick, creamy milk.
I like that milk moment, because it seems like a callback to Pulp Fiction when Jules takes the soda and drinks the entire soda.
Yes,
it's like, it seems almost like a very specific callback to that power move, right?
Well,
if you're in a situation where you're talking to someone and you want to, what he's trying to communicate there, I think, what Landa, the character, is trying to communicate there is like, anything you give me, I'm gonna take it all and then some. Right? Like, offer me a glass of milk. I'm going to drink the entire thing. Yeah. Much like Jules in the scene in the apartment in Pulp Fiction.
I do. I love that he has those like food moments. Like no cheeseburger ever looks as good as the one.
Well, and that's what I wanted to bring up. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's like the Pulp Fiction burger. Like,
Yeah.
it like you were saying, it's like almost a disrespect. Like, you're not important enough for me to not eat. While we're talking about this life and death situation, whether it's Sam Jackson
That's
or
that's
you know,
also a good point. And that's I feel obligated to bring up the nachos in Death Proof. The nachos and the club soda with lime. That always I'm like, God damn it, I want some nachos now. Like, even after Stuntman Mike is like shoveling them in his mouth with his thumb and sucking on his fingers. And... so what else we got for Inglourious?
What else we got for characters? Well, I want to return to the Bastards a little bit.
Yeah, please.
I think the Bastards get the exact right amount of characterization. Because in the film, they kind of function as one character.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? One character, several
That's
different
fair.
aspects of one character. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's like Stieglitz gets that little extra bit of characterization, and then he's one of the ones that you focus on.
Is
Anyone
Stieglitz the bear Jew?
No, that's Donnie.
Donnie,
Stieglitz,
yeah, right.
Stieglitz was the German
Oh, okay.
who killed all the
traitor. Yeah.
killed a bunch of people and is now famous.
I'm
within
so
the
bad
German
with names.
command. It's all
Yeah.
good. I only know that because I looked up everybody.
Oh, okay.
Right before we recorded. But yeah, it's like so. Aldo Rain gets the most characterization, and then there are a couple like sub Aldo bastards that get a little bit of characterization. They usually get like one or two good traits and a pretty good backstory.
Yeah.
And then they're the ones that are focused on most in the thing in the movie and whatever scenes they're in, and then the rest of them are kind of filler bastards who they're good actors, right?
Yeah.
They're good in a way that they clearly have an idea in their heads of who these characters are, but you never in the script, I don't think you don't get very much overt characterization of those guys.
Well, I think one of the things that's great about Tarantino is that he just has so many friends in the industry, and he loves having his friends be in his movies.
Mm-hmm.
He will cast somebody in a role that that did not need to be fucking who is Aldo? Was it Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt did not need to play Aldo. Like
No.
and he just destroys it. Same thing as we'll probably get into with Leo in Django Unchained. He did not need to do that. Like that was way too fantastic of an actor that you needed for that. But
I don't love that performance.
oh really?
I don't love that performance. I don't love Leo.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into it. We
Yeah.
gotta finish Bastards first, but it's good to know we're gonna have a whole time about that. I like him.
Okay. Okay. Good. We can move on.
When we do another podcast where we rank every Tarantino performance and character, then we'll get into that deep. But yeah, Inglourious Basterds.
Lord.
Why do you hate this movie so much, Curtis?
Well, I don't hate it.
I know. I'm being
So
facetious.
here's one of the I've already kind of said a couple things about things that I didn't love about it. The other one is that I feel like, as far as I've said 1,000 times so far, Tarantino does suspense really well, and I almost don't like the way the suspense is handled in parts of Inglourious Basterds. For example, in Reservoir Dogs, you have this, all these criminals, one's a rat. You're trying to figure out
Right.
which one's a rat, and then before you can even think about who the characters are, they tell you who the rat is, and then you're like, oh my god, I know this guy is the rat. How are they going to find out? And you have this knowledge that and it's the same thing when you are watching. I don't want to get too much into it. Django, you know what the plan is, and you are hoping like, oh my god, they're still getting away with it? Are they going to get caught? Are they going to get found out? In Inglourious Basterds, all of the suspense is this hopeless. Like at every turn, it's every lie they tell Hans Landa, he knows it's bullshit. Like every single lie they tell him, he knows they're full of shit.
When he makes them say their names over and over again,
Yeah.
I love
Or like
that
when he's grilling her about how she broke her
Dominic
leg, and you're just like, oh my god, he fucking knows. Like he
and
knows.
then he pulls the shoe out, and you like see it dawn on her.
And
face.
it's just that's one of so it's suspenseful for me, because obviously it's suspenseful because that there's this tension of how are they going to get through this, but I think it almost works less well than in some of his other movies because how futile it is. And then I guess it does pay off in the end because you know, as I just said, I thought the whole movie was futile because that's not how it happened, and then it does. So maybe I'm willing to admit that Tarantino is just a super genius, and just he's doing all those little things to, you know, build you up to the big spin at the end. But I think the suspense in that doesn't work as well because they never for a chance could trick anybody, you know, until the very, very end. So that, I think, that part of it doesn't work as well.
I see it a little bit differently. I guess I don't see it as building up to a suspenseful moment so much as I see it like this whole movie. This might be Tarantino's movie that is most about movies. Mm-hmm. Not just about like other movies, but about the actual process of filmmaking, that process of like putting on a show. To me, the whole build up to that final moment, those final moments in the theater is, what's this actually going to look like when it happens?
Yeah.
You know, because from the beginning, I think it's hard to remember back to 2009 when I first watched it, but I never had a doubt in my mind that Tarantino was going to do something crazy at the end of that movie. You know, like I know that's not how it happened, but I never thought that he was going to withhold that release, that catharsis of seeing the plan come to fruition. This is something that I've noticed throughout his movies. He's not one to deny the audience catharsis.
No.
He's all about fulfilling that and fulfilling that expectation. Sometimes fulfilling it a little bit differently than you expect. Like Kill Bill doesn't end with a big fight between the bride and Bill. It ends with like a brief moment.
Yeah.
But it feels as cathartic as a big fight would. It maybe even feels more cathartic than a big fight would because of how true it is to the characters. And it's the same in Inglourious Basterds, which obviously ends on like this massive set piece of a theater burning down with all these Nazis inside of it. Mm-hmm. But to me, that was the build-up. And then I got what I wanted. And then there's a little tag at the end with Londa.
Isn't that nice?
That's so good. Because Londa thinks that he's gotten away with it.
Yeah.
Like, Londa thinks he's in the clear.
Yeah. And he has the great part about that too is just the realization when Aldo asks him, I bet you're going to take that jacket off when you get home. And you're like, I forgot about that thing from 2 hours ago. Like, but so what about you, Cave, as far as weighing in on how I don't really know what I'm trying to say here. What were you talking about?
We're talking about the tension of the movie and
right,
where it is, because I think every story, that's a very broad overstatement, but many stories operate through tension or through suspense. So how do you think this story operates, like on that level?
Well, I think the suspense in this movie is like 90% of the reason why I love it, because it's like you're saying, it's almost that false suspense where you know this movie is straight up American Uncle Sam satire. Is we're gonna go in, the American boys are gonna kick ass, take names, be done with it, and you know that's where the movie's going about the halfway point if you haven't figured it out at that point. And I think that like the suspense he puts in, I think he just has to put it in just to fucking separate some of the like. It's guaranteed that these guys are going to go in and do this. So I'm going to take a moment, let you breathe, put things in like the scene in the bottom of the tavern where they all have their guns pointed at each other's balls. Yeah. And he's like, well, guess what? I've been doing the same thing. And it's like, I think it's almost comedic relief how high Tarantino will bring the tension up to a point of almost being uncomfortable. Like you're saying, watching a guy eat a puff pastry while he's threatening lives. It's like he throws little things where I think it's like, it's necessary, especially for this movie. Where you know the end game, where I felt like I knew the end game, even though, Curt, you say it was super blindsided, because, like you said, it's not historically anywhere near accurate.
And I don't want to make it sound like I don't think that's a valid way to watch the movie. I
think it is.
I totally think that is like a super cool way to watch the movie, is like, how is he gonna change, or how's he gonna divert course away from this? And then he totally doesn't. He just blasts right into the fucking iceberg.
Actually, by the way, it's gonna be what you thought times 1,000.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think for that, it's the beauty in it for me. It's just the thing I like about it. That's what I expect when I see something that you know is going to be distinctly Tarantino being super self-masturbatory when it comes to the end of a movie. You kind of you're at the end of the theater where, like Curt, you were saying, you have the bomb strapped down the leg. You're like, oh, this guy's not getting out. These two aren't getting out. Maybe someone will get out. And I think at that point, that's when you go, oh, he's about to go full Tarantino and just.
And I guess Well, so what prior work in Tarantino's career would have signaled that?
At the time, nothing. I've
than,
rewatched it
Death
a
Proof.
few times.
I think Death Proof has that same explosive ending that he kind of was setting up his next couple movies for. You could almost divide it out into like an artistic phase. Like, this is my massive ending set pieces phase.
He starts to set up Kill Bill, but then, like you said, you don't get you think it's gonna go all fucking shitballs crazy at the end, and it kind of doesn't. It's just like a brief little like, hey, here, by the way, haha, not gonna go there.
It's the quiet moment that the characters deserve, rather than the loud fight that the audience kind of part of them wants.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, and that's interesting to point out, because I'd never realized how many. Most of his movies before that had relatively low-key, quiet endings. I mean, Reservoir Dogs is Harvey Keitel
cradling orange in his arms, and Pulp Fiction is like those two dudes walking out of a diner.
Yeah, just the end is super lackluster.
Jackie Brown is like, well, bye. You know, like,
hey, you want to come with me? No, all right. I really wanted you to.
You know, we've talked about Kill Bill, so I guess maybe that. I don't think I ever expected it to be a very, like, quiet ending, because I never noticed that trend until now, but...
That might be the difference. See, the thing I'm thinking about is what we got into earlier. See, that's my first Tarantino movie. Right. So that might be why I'm watching it the whole time going, oh yeah, here we go, this is going to happen. And for you guys, it might have been more like, well, this isn't what Tarantino does, so we'll
I
wait and
definitely
see
never
his weird
thought about
twist.
that until now, but that is somewhat interesting.
Fair enough.
Do we have anything else for Inglourious?
Hell yeah, we do.
Anything that we have to say? Because we're at 45 minutes and we have 2 more movies to go.
I got a lot of shit that I want to say.
Yeah, well, you could do an Inglourious Basterds podcast.
Oh, dude, Every year, probably could have done a whole podcast for any one of these movies.
I just didn't want it to be the next 6 months of our life. Like,
yeah. Wait, we're going to do a bi-weekly podcast for 10, for 16 weeks, for a whole quarter of a year. We're going to talk about Tarantino movies. I just want to get, like, some of my favorite scenes in Inglourious Basterds.
Okay.
Right. So I already mentioned the scene where Mike Myers, such a bizarre performance.
So strange.
His accent is out of control. Like, someone put a fucking governor on that guy. He has gone mad. That's a great scene. I already mentioned Shosanna, but I want to retread that real quick.
Okay, because I have something to add to that too, so go for it.
Shosanna is fascinating to me from a historical perspective. Because to me, she kind of represents, people used to take this shit seriously.
Yeah.
People used to... I'm not saying that we should return to these times, but, there used to be anarchists bombing shit all the time, in the early 1900s. And I think Shosanna is kind of a bridge to that world. People who knew that the political and moral fights that they were fighting were so important that... they felt justified doing that kind of thing. That they felt justified bombing stuff. I'm gonna get put on a fucking FBI list after saying shit like that.
Yeah,
Ben is on a list. I'm already on a different list, so...
Yeah. They're gonna cross-reference our lists, and then those two lists are gonna be linked together. But, that's one of the reasons I like Shosanna. And that's one of the reasons I like Marcel as well, is you don't find out a ton about Marcel, but he's what the fuck are you talking about? He's kind of the mediating force put on Shosanna, or he's trying to not to calm her down, but to say whoa, are you sure that you want to do this? And then of course she comes out and says, it plays with gender in an interesting way, because usually the man has the big idea. This is the thing that I'm gonna do to make my stamp on the world, and some woman in his life comes up and it's like, are you sure you want to do that? In this case, it's the woman who has the revolutionary idea to end World War II, probably saving countless lives.
Yeah.
Probably, preventing the atom bomb from getting dropped at some point. If they're a little bit earlier. I mean, I'm not a history expert.
No,
but...
the timeline's definitely right. It would have been made through the Manhattan Project by the time, but it wouldn't have been dropped or tested at that point, or light testing anyways.
Yeah, so I wonder if they would have even gone forward with that. I don't know, that's the kind of historical what-if stuff that these movies also make me think about a lot. We'll get into more of that with Django. But, so that's another thing that I love, is just how politically fervent Shosanna is. I guess I don't have anything else I love Inglourious Basterds.
It's a great movie.
It might be his masterpiece.
See, we're gonna have a real hard time ranking when we.
Are we gonna have to come up with one list?
You said we had to agree.
I take that back.
It's on the internet, man. I think we should try. We should make our own list and then try to sway each other. But I'm not gonna force you to say something you don't agree with.
We're not gonna end the podcast if we don't agree.
Right.
But what if we did?
What if we did?
What if we took it?
I hope you guys fucking enjoyed it.
Hope you guys liked it.
I guess we shouldn't have talked about Tarantino first.
I guess we really
Shit got real.
Put the plug in this one. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to.
The only thing, it was kind of funny, and maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I thought of it because I thought it was interesting that you two didn't seem to make the connection of who Shosanna was when they showed her 15 years later. Mm-hmm. But if I recall correctly, I think I instantly knew, and the reason I remembered it was because everything that Hans Landa does, Hans Landa, whatever.
Hans Landa
is just disgusting and like memorable. And when she's running away, you almost would think like you would expect him to be angry that one of these Jews got away from him and he's the Jew hunter, and he just kind of happily, he says au revoir, Shosanna.
Au revoir.
Like,
which does not mean like goodbye. It means like till next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and they point that out later in the movie. They point that out. They who says it? No, that's Django. That's Django. Yeah.
And it's the German. He says, I would say auf Wiedersehen.
Yeah.
Is au revoir like equivalent to
I don't know.
auf Wiedersehen?
Now I sound dumb.
Man, edit this whole bit out. We don't know fucking shit about shit.
I don't know any other language.
We're a bunch of idiots.
So anyway, there was that moment really sunk in because it was just this. To me, it just said you're not getting away. You're getting away for now, but like I'm the Jew hunter. I'll find you. And then so when they showed this character that much later, I think I was instantly like, oh fuck, like, well, he found her. Like, but that was just me. Maybe having the knowledge of having seen it a few times, I'm misreading into my previous thoughts, but.
I'm now having a lot of anxiety about how fucking wrong I was about au revoir. So I just need to get that out there. Said that in the heat of the moment. I don't actually believe that. I'm going to look it up later and feel like a fucking idiot. Now I'm going to look like an idiot if I was right, though. Is the thing. So pretty much, I'm in like a fucking Schrodinger. I'm in a quantum state of shame right now. I'm feeling shame from two different possible directions that my life could go. Yeah, every theoretical future that I see in front of me is just a shame palace that I'm going to have to live in 3 hours when we're done recording this and I look it up.
So, should we move on to Django? I feel bad leaving any of these movies behind. I could go back and talk about Reservoir Dogs more. Like I could.
Yeah, me too.
Any movie, it's hard to. I don't know why we thought we should put 3 in one episode.
I don't know. It seemed right at the time.
Seemed reasonable.
It seemed totally reasonable. I was like, oh, we'll do 15 minutes apiece, and then.
Yeah. So I will say, I don't know if I remember every exact time, but in my notes for Django, I wrote that I cried like 4 times during this movie. I can't watch this movie with other people because I'll get like the one like man tear. Mm-hmm. Like it never made me bawl, but it just like
just wells up.
It's just like, and then one tear will drip. There are a few scenes in Django that are very hard to watch.
What are they? They might be some of mine.
The first one is when Django is begging and they're whipping Broomhilda.
That whole flashback stresses me out.
That's bad.
That's one of the best parts in any Quentin Tarantino movie.
What else? I put 4. there were 4 times that I fucking cried during this movie.
I mean, are they like the big? Because there are probably 3 or 4 moments of unvarnished depiction of slavery.
Yeah.
That flashback is one. The Mandingo fight is one.
That's so hard.
Which, like, even though Mandingo fighting wasn't real.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know if it was not, but I knew it was.
So that's a complicated situation. Do we want to get into, like, the historicity of Mandingo fighting right now? Because I looked some of this shit up.
I don't know if we have time for this.
Yeah. That's a different podcast in itself.
Right. The History of Slavery podcast I'm going to be doing. I'm going to have a History of World War II one inspired by Bastards. I'm going to have a History of Slavery one inspired by Django. I'm sure Quentin would be proud to hear that. He's gotten us all interested in history to this extent. The long and short of it is Mandingo fighting was not real in that way, but gladiatorial style fights between slaves, usually not to the death. but they were real. And the depiction of the fight in Django Unchained, I feel, even if it's not literally true about what slave owners did to their property, it tells us something true. That depiction, that moment of watching a man kill another man because a man who owned him told him he had to.
Yeah.
That moment is real. And that moment tells us something real about slavery.
Definitely.
That other movies just beat around the bush about.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I'm pretty sure the hammer was one of the tear jerking where you end it, throws it. The sound of that hammer hitting the wooden floor is so...
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Oh,
You see it. It doesn't cut away. You like see the hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the moment where the D'Artagnan is ripped apart by dogs.
Yeah.
That's another really tough moment.
That's right.
About the like realities of slavery, the reality
send him.
of being a runaway slave, especially after Candy has gone and talked to him.
Yeah. Oh,
like a human, and then he sends dogs to kill him like an animal.
Yeah.
The one of the other moments too that made me cry. It feels weird to say that.
It's okay, man. This is a safe space. We established that when we were talking about how much Kill Bill
then we
makes us
upload
cry.
it to the least safest space in the world.
Yeah.
When they open the hot box and dump water on Brunhilde and she just screams, that was really hard to... They pull her out naked, and that's very hard to watch.
Yeah.
So I cried a lot during this movie.
It's a tough movie to
It's a really
watch.
real movie. It's pretty raw, He doesn't... There's not much that he, puts a sugarcoat over. He says, this was the America at the time. This is what we did.
Especially
Love
on
it or
the
hate
plantations. This was something that I looked up. The ways that slaves were treated were different in the cities as opposed to the plantations.
Yes. Yeah, 100% true. Yep.
On the plantations, and Tarantino actually said this in an interview about Django Unchained. On the plantations, that plantation owner was like a king.
Well, it was law, because I lived outside of Charlotte for a handful of years in North Carolina. So I've seen some of these plantations you're talking about, and they have placards that say what you're saying, and it was like a land of this is my 10 acres, 20 acres, and I'm the god of this world, like you're saying, like a king or a demigod. It was weird.
I have the power of life and death.
Yeah.
On this land.
And I mean, 20 acres in the Civil War, when you can't read, that's that 20 acres. That's your world.
That's your
world. So it's not too crazy to think about the fact that that's what it was like.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing about Django, from a thematic perspective for me, is the treatment of slavery, which again is unlike any other movie that I have ever seen or heard of. It's one of the things that makes Django Unchained really unique, is that it doesn't. It wants to put it out there.
Yeah.
It sees that America has not been talking enough about its sins, right? The horrible sins that America created. It's kind of infected our nation's spirit. And honestly, I think that our inability as a nation to confront the horrors of slavery and to confront a lot of the horrors of what we did to the indigenous people of the land that we took over, those things are infecting us to this day. And they're causing a lot of the social problems that we see to this day. Not to go all social justice warrior on everybody, but...
I will say that, obviously I would never say any names here, but I have talked to a person that enjoyed... I've never seen Roots. Not that I wouldn't want to, I just also haven't seen Jaws. That's probably fucked up that I compared Roots and Jaws. Sorry, everybody. I'm just saying I haven't seen a lot of important film and TV. But anyway, I was talking to somebody who liked Roots, and they had watched it a couple times, and they're older than me, and they had said that they really like it, and they think it's really a really good show or series. I think it's a series.
Yeah,
right?
It was a mini series. I think it was 16 hours.
But they think that there's no way it really could have been that bad. Like they, to a certain degree, a lot of Americans, not just, I don't want to sound like I'm enlightened and I know everything, but a lot of Americans, we know how bad slavery is, to the sense that we won't allow ourselves to know how bad it was. Like, we have to push it away and ignore it and pretend that, that was so long ago. There's no way that it was so bad that it's still affecting our country today. but this is one thing that I really liked about that movie, is that there's so much in your face horrible actions that even, you take Mandingo fighting, even if it wasn't real in that way, that is a way that you can, it may not be 100% accurate, but it does effectively cram more horror into a 2-hour window of a movie, I guess, is what I'm trying to take out of that whole tangent I just went on.
It really communicates to you one of the primal deep down horrors of slavery, which is the idea of one person having complete control over another person.
Yep.
Body and mind. Maybe not mind. I mean, I read a lot about slave resistance and slave revolts stuff after this. But
their mind, in the sense that you can make it so they never leave their plot of land or learn how to read.
Yeah, you have complete control over their body and their environment.
Yeah.
And that gives you a lot of control over a person, a disturbing amount of control, almost a revolting, repulsive amount of control that is hard to watch. And it should be hard to watch. But put it in those movies anyway, Quentin. We love it.
One of the things that I thought was really great in this movie, this is kind of going all over the place, but is one of the there are a few times, I love Quentin Tarantino movies, but I don't...
No shit.
Yeah.
You do?
I don't notice always, great shots or angles. A lot of that stuff kind of goes over my head, artistic choices to, oh, well, there's a reason. Or I'll be like, it's kind of cool. And someone will be like, well, the fuck, obviously the reason he did it like that, it wasn't an accident. But one that I really loved in this movie was when they go to... the first plantation to take out the three brothers, and when he shoots one of them and blood splatters on the cotton. I think that was one of the most seeing that revenge, and maybe it's because that is something, I don't know, but just the revenge in Django really works. All these movies have some aspects of revenge in them, but this is the one where I'm totally channeled into Quentin Tarantino. I'm revenge. Kill them all. And that was one thing that I was just whew. It feels when he's, whipping the guy's so drunk he can't even hold his gun because he just gets drunk and beats on slaves. Yeah. And he's just whipping the shit out of him, and you're just laughing because you're cheering so much in your head.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the powerful things about both Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained, is that in the last couple hundred years, there have been some high-profile atrocities, right? The Nazis are big high-profile atrocity. Slavery in America, high-profile atrocity. And I think there's a feeling, and I think that it's probably the reality, that these groups did not face adequate punishment for the evil that they had done. And for me, I'm I'm high-minded and shit, right? I'm revenge. You don't need revenge. Just try to. Revenge is you hurting yourself because someone else hurt you. That ain't how it works in movies, though, right? In movies, we get to decide how these motherfuckers get remembered, right? The fact that slave holders and slave owners and slave traders, nobody who is involved with the slave trade in Django Unchained gets a dignified death. Because they don't fucking deserve it. Yeah. Right? Anybody who is involved with slavery gets fucking shot in the head and their brains all fly out and everyone cheers. And that's the punishment that you get for it being involved in these atrocities. It's the same with the Nazis in Inglourious Basterds. And it should be. That's the way it should be. Right? If you can find someone who thinks that, the slave owners deserved more dignified deaths, I guess you can... I'm willing to entertain an argument that all human life is worthy of dignity at some level, but not in the fucking movies. Yeah. All right, in the movies, you get what you deserve at a spiritual level. Any person who back in the day, hung up their morals and ethics long enough to be a slave owner or a slave trader, their punishment, in my mind, is that they get a funny death in a Quentin Tarantino movie. And it's okay, and nobody has a problem with it.
Yeah. One of the other, speaking of funny...
I kind of went off the rails there a little bit.
That's okay.
It kind of took us to a different place.
I just, one of the other big scenes that I had written down in my notes was the white bags the KKK raid.
The Saturday Night Live sketch that's just kind of plopped in this movie. No, don't get me wrong, I love it. I think it's hilarious.
Oh my! Every time that fucking kills me. Like, I just think it just what a simple and like entertaining way to just kind of like poke fun, point out how absurd the whole thing is, and just kind of the idiocy of the people that did that type of thing. And I just think that it's such a simple, fun, like, way to look at such a horrible thing and to point out how awful it is.
Have you guys ever seen a movie called Four Lions?
No.
It's a British movie about terrorism.
Yeah.
It's like the protagonists of the movie are terrorists. They spend the whole movie trying to plan a suicide bombing, and they successfully do plan and execute a suicide bombing on a marathon. It came out before the whole Boston thing.
Before that whole terrorist
It's also
marathon.
from England, so like it's different place. But that movie's whole deal is people often think that terrorists are these like evil masterminds. Really, they're just idiots.
No,
they're just fucking assholes who like wanted a cause, so they found this cause, and then they follow through with their cause. And I think that Tarantino is making a similar point with that scene about the apparent birth of the Ku Klux Klan 10 years before the Ku Klux Klan was actually founded or something.
Yeah.
And he's saying like these guys were not masterminds. No. These guys were not even particularly intelligent people, because at some point you have to you give up a piece of yourself when you do something like engage in the system of slavery.
Yep.
And they're idiots in that scene. They're idiots to be laughed at.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing. It's also just a hilarious scene. The real character, as a person who is in a club right now, you know, the like little shitty back and forth with people, like, well, my mask doesn't fit right.
Yeah.
Well, my wife made those masks, so you just...
We're not saying we don't appreciate the mask.
Don't you ask me or mine for anything ever again.
But maybe next time.
Petulant man-children, like, riding out. The shots of them riding to... That's Wagner, right? Is it Flight of the Valkyries?
Yeah. Yep.
That's how they see themselves. It's like, an avenging force riding over the hills. And then you see how they actually are, which is a bunch of idiots and assholes that can't do anything right. And they just happen. The only reason they have any power at all is because the system has given them that power.
Yeah.
They have power because they're white. They don't have power because they're good people or because they're righteous in any way.
Intelligent.
It's a good scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cave?
I feel like we just kind of accidentally fallen back into the old
generally it. I mean, there isn't a whole lot else for that movie for me to add on. I mean, it definitely feels like a necessary, but it definitely feels like an envelope pusher, but in a very necessary way. That sheds a lot of, like you guys are saying, sheds a lot of light on an interesting cultural reference point that we kind of tend to put on the back burner more often than not. But yeah, I mean, you guys hit a lot of the good points that are there. There's a lot of perfect vengeance on the people who deserve it, and I think it's a great movie that if people haven't taken a look at how things kind of went in America, and this is the only Tarantino movie you missed, even though if you're listening to these, I imagine you're right there with us with loving Tarantino. This is probably a good one to kind of, it's not authenticity fact-wise, it's not 100% accurate, like we've talked about some of its mistakes, but I think it does shed, like, the big key point you guys pushed. I agree. Sheds a lot of light on a pretty shitty time we went through. So, yeah, I think it's a great movie. I think it's up there for me. For that aspect, it's up there for me as one of the top Tarantino movies.
It's one of my favorites, for sure.
Probably one of my favorites.
It feels very complete for some reason.
I think...
It does. It's an epic. It's an epic in a way that he hasn't done that many other epics. It's a journey, right? Like, the whole length of this movie.
And a couple things about this, too, is... I think, given that it's this epic journey, you really, at least me anyway, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I really feel a friendship between Django and, obviously I can't remember, Christoph Schultz.
Dr. King. What an audacious name to give your character in a movie about slavery.
I really feel their connection. You know, they seem very authentic. King is teaching Django to read. he's teaching him a trade. You know, he respects him.
Yeah.
He refers to. I love when he refers to their slavery as the whole pesky, like saying he doesn't. I don't want to keep you as a slave, but I might have to unless you just want to come. You know, and he gives him a cut, and you just feel like it's a very authentic friendship. And you know, like when they're going to kill Django's first bounty, he kind of like doesn't want to do it, and then King kind of steps into this like, you know, father-son thing. He's like, you know, this is my job. This is, you know, this might not look or be fun, but this is what it is. And if you want to do it, you know, this is what you have to do. And then Django, you know, goes through with it. And I just think I really appreciate the relationship that those two develop and have to, you know, even when they Dr. King goes on this suicide mission trying to get Django's wife back, you know. I just really love how they explore their relationship, and I think it works really well.
That's an interesting the travel to Candyland, that like final scene, because when they go into it, I don't think they see it as a suicide mission.
Yeah, no, I think
they're
really
gonna get away with it.
Yeah,
and same thing, you know. I love too, because where the suspense in Inglourious Basterds is this hopeless, like, they know you're fucking, you know. I really like Django because King has gotten so attached to Django, or, you know, learned so much. I don't really know the best way to phrase it, but
let's get back to that. Let's put a pin in that, 'cause I got some ideas.
He gets beaten. He loses to Leonardo DiCaprio.
Candy.
Calvin Candy. And he knows he lost, but he's alive, and he can leave.
Yeah.
Like, and they have, you know, he lost $12,000, but he has Django, he has Broomhilda. They can leave, and he chooses to, you know, kill Candy, knowing that, you know, he's not going to walk away from that.
Yeah, no.
Like, and I thought that was a very nice way to show the progress of their relationship. Like, you know, he went into this as a way to make money, and he found something so... Now it sounds like an after-school special, but he found something so much more valuable than the bounties that he's willing to sacrifice himself to make sure they get to continue their life.
So here's my read on that whole situation. And I only realized this the last time I watched this movie. I've probably seen it a handful of times before that, 2 or 3 times.
I've watched this one quite a bit because I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah.
To me, the character of Dr. Schultz shows something historically real about white people at the time, about the abolition movement. And I've looked into this since watching Django. And what you see is that there were kind of 2 camps as far as white people and slavery goes. There were people who were like, let's let them keep doing that horrible thing that they do, but not let it's definitely not coming to our state, and we're not going to let any other states, any new states that we form, we're not going to let them do it either. So you had that divide. People who were both against slavery, but one of them believed, or one of the groups of people believes that it is not, it's bad, but not that bad, right?
Yeah.
And then the other group is like, we need to end slavery by any means necessary. A guy, John Brown. Have either of you heard of John Brown?
No.
I guess he's one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite like historical figures. He wants to play him in a biopic. John Brown was a violent anti-slavery. He was a violent abolitionist, like crusader for years and years. White guy. Grew up in like Ohio, I think. And he actually ended up kicking off the Civil War by raiding this place called Harper's Ferry. He wanted to steal a bunch of weapons and arm slaves with them so that the slaves could start an armed slave revolt. He ends up getting caught. John Brown ends up getting executed, but he ends up being kind of a martyr for the abolitionist movement. Tensions continue to rise. This happened in 1859. And then a few years later, the Civil War breaks out. Yeah. A lot of historians agree that John Brown, his actions at Harper's Ferry, started the Civil War. Like they set
Definitely.
set that events into motion.
So I knew the Harper's Ferry story. Didn't realize that it was John Brown who had done that.
Yeah,
or had been executed. But that's funny that you even brought that up.
So I think I see that as kind of an inspiration for the character of Dr. Schultz, which is where I started this.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Schultz at the beginning is one of those people who's like, slavery, it's abhorrent. I would never do such a thing, but if I have to, I'll engage with the system. And then when he is in Candy's den, and I think they've just kind of discussed the deal and they're about to finish it off. And there are these shots of Dr. Schultz sitting there thinking about D'Artagnan, I believe. Thinking about D'Artagnan getting ripped apart by dogs. And I believe in that moment that Dr. Schultz realizes slavery is not just a bad thing that you can kind of exist alongside. Slavery is something that needs to be done away with at any cost. So he does his part in that moment.
Yeah.
Trying to do away with slavery, at least insofar as he can. And I think maybe he even feels a little guilty for engaging with it as much as he has.
Yeah.
He feels, and not that Dr. Schultz was any kind of slave trader or slave holder or anything, but he has clearly gone through a number of years where he sees American slavery as being like, just another thing that makes them inferior to my fine German breed. You know?
I mean, he bought Django.
He bought Django fair and square. Had those guys not hassled him
quote
about
unquote, fair and square.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if Dr. Schultz would have killed those slave traders had they not given him shit.
I don't think he would have.
I don't think he would have either, because it got a little messier. It would have seemed unnecessary to him at the time. By the end of the movie, where Dr. Schultz is at the end, I think he would have killed those guys.
And laughed.
Sight unseen. He probably wouldn't have said a word to them.
No.
He would have seen some men walking through the woods with a trail of slaves behind them, and he would have murdered them outright and freed the slaves without a second thought. I think that's the journey that Dr. Schultz takes. Yeah. Why do you guys think that Schultz helps Django?
I don't guess I have a great answer for that.
Yeah,
I just think that at first he sees Django as a means to an end. I need this guy to help cash this big bounty. And then I don't know if I can think of a moment along the way where, maybe he thinks like he feels guilty that he has a slave, so maybe by teaching him to read, he can alleviate some of this guilt. And then I don't know if there's one moment where they're like, we're friends now. But they, from the beginning of the movie, they just have great dialogue. But I don't know, I think it might be, now I'm piecing this together as I think of it, but
that's cool.
Maybe simply the fact that the woman's name is Broomhilda.
See, that's what I think it is.
He feels connected to this. This is the legend. He's going to the castle to save, the princess.
He has that line, it's not often that a German meets a real-life Siegfried.
Yeah.
I love that line.
That's true.
You see, his face change when he finds out that Django's wife's name is Broomhilda. He's surprised. He's flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And then you hear the whole story about why her name is Broomhilda.
Yeah, well, understandably so at first. But I think you guys are probably on it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, like you were saying before, nothing I can come up with without kind of bullshitting my way through it. But maybe, it feels more or less like it's just one of those things. You said he had to buy Django. There's a bunch of weird moral quandary that you go through eventually. Wherever the scene is that he does it, you don't quite know. It could be the Broomhilda stuff that gives him a little taste of, his nostalgia, I guess. But I think it's just a thing where it's like it went from he was a means to an end to, well, now he's someone I actually care about. Fuck it, I'm going to go full bore. Essentially they form like a brothership in a weird way.
Yeah, they partner up. They form a business partnership that clearly works out really well for both of them over the course of that winter. Like that very profitable winter as the title. It's like
maybe it's just. Maybe it's as simple as King has that innate thirst for revenge that Tarantino characters have. He sees that this person has been wronged in his opinion and wants to help him get his revenge, and that is emphasized by the fact that both Broomhilda and Django fit into the roles of these characters he's already so familiar with because of legends and fairy tales. So maybe he feels instantly connected to, helping out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can we go back to Inglourious Basterds real quick?
Real quick.
Real quick. I just thought of
there's
something.
still some Django.
You mentioned legends and fairy tales and stuff like that. Inglourious Basterds is interesting as a fairy tale because it kind of casts, like, if we think of it as a German fairy tale, like, what does it make you think of? It makes me think of Hansel and Gretel.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The Germans are kind of cast as Hansel and Gretel, and Shosanna is the witch that burns them to death at the end. Right? Just one of those weird little things that you notice in a movie.
That's
that I didn't think of until just now. But the first chapter is called, what is it, Once Upon a Time in Nazi occupied France or something.
Yeah.
Which is a reference both to the Western Once Upon a Time in the West, I think. I think it's a reference to that. And it's also a reference to fairy tales, and the rest of the movie is kind of a fairy tale. Anyway, Django Unchained.
So I don't really know how to fit either of these little tidbits on my notes in, because they don't really. But just two little things I want to point out. Not that it matters, but it's a Tarantino movie, so I guess they had to do what they had to do to make it a Tarantino movie. I'm pretty sure Civil War was still like muskets. There were, and the reason. So as far as like all the rifles and guns and all that, I think that was added for the sake of being in the movie.
I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure.
And the reason I think that is because I recall this is the most trivial. This is why I think and say I know this, so I could very well be wrong. The History Channel made a Civil War video game that my brother played when I was in high school. He's a little bit younger than me. And I think I read in the instruction manual that they actually pointed out that semi-automatic rifles, or maybe even bolt-action rifles, weren't invented until about 5 years after the Civil War ended. But for the sake of making a game playable, they didn't put muskets in the game. So I don't know if that's true, but that's why I think that's
actually pretty true. Yeah,
the
double action, which is like for a handgun, for example, when you see that Western revolver, that Smith & Wesson classic 6-shot revolver, as a double action revolver, and that type of revolver didn't come out, I think, late 1800s. I think it was like 1880.
And I don't know anything about pistols. I just because of that.
And Django carries one very similar to the era I'm talking about. So yeah, when it comes to the gunness of the movie, the
gunnosity,
the gunosity.
Such
gunosity. Yeah, it's a little off, but
that is an interesting. That's an interesting tidbit.
Yeah.
One of the other very interesting things to me, anyway, we could talk about Ben's skull. Was it Ben? Was that the?
I'm not sure. I think it was.
I think it was Ben. Was the name? I'm sure I didn't think of you when I saw it. Weirdly enough, but
now you're looking right at me.
Now I'm looking right at you.
Thinking about my skull.
Thinking about Ben's a lot. So that at the time, that was a very real science.
Phrenology.
And yes, I did. I forgot the name of it, and this is just one of the points, one of the very rare points in my life where I get to say I read a book once, but that instantly made me think of a book that I had to read. And then as soon as I say I had to read in college, it kind of goes out the window because they made you read it. All right,
it doesn't count.
Shut up, Curt. But The Mismeasure of Man by Stephen Jay Gould.
Oh, that's a very good book.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite. That was like one of the very few textbooks I kept because it was really interesting. They talk about that a lot and explain some of the possibly even innocent errors that were made trying to. They had the answers they wanted, and now they needed to prove those answers. Mm-hmm. So a lot of measuring the size of skulls or little, as they point out, dimples in the skulls. That's a very real pseudoscience that I thought was very interesting that Quentin Tarantino put in the movie.
Interesting fact about that. Leo brought that to the role.
Did he?
Leo brought that to the role because apparently he is a big history buff of the period as well, and he and Tarantino both are very well researched about what people would have been thinking and feeling in that time.
Yeah.
So Leo said, this would be why this guy would feel justified in doing what he does. He clearly sees himself as like a gentry. He sees himself as like an upper class. He sees himself as American nobility.
Yeah.
Right? So, and nobility would never hold someone down in slavery unless they really deserved it. So he would go out and find, like you said, the science to justify his pre-existing beliefs and
So
the things that keep him in power.
One of the things that jumped out to me about that was the dimples, and then another way that they would justify these things was they would fill a skull with beans or whatever, and
as you do,
and then they would measure the volume. They dump them out and measure the volume of how much of it fit in a skull. And the thought was, the bigger your skull, the bigger your brain, the smarter you are. And so I really liked, in the Mismeasure of Man, there was kind of a lot of people tamped a little bit harder on the white skulls to get, more into it before they emptied it out and stuff. And I just thought that was very interesting. I didn't know that Leo brought that in there, but I thought that was a very interesting that they would put that, because that was a very real thought at the time.
Yeah. That's one of those things that, because it's not true, it just kind of gets, drifts away from culture over time. But yeah, a lot of people in power would have believed that kind of thing. They would have believed in phrenology.
This might be a good time to talk about Mr. Candy.
Yeah.
So you tell me about, because you mentioned earlier you didn't love Leo in the role.
I think he goes a little over the top towards the end.
Yeah. Not
in like a way that I like that much. In a way that almost takes me out of it. Mr. DiCaprio, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for saying this. Mr. Tarantino, if you're listening, I'm sorry for saying anything bad about any of your movies. But yeah, to me, Leo always does this thing in movies that I can tell he feels like he's really going to exercise his range. He doesn't allow the dynamics to waver between. He's kind of a straight line up, like the graph of his intensity. Especially during that scene, of course, I'm mostly referring, because I love his performance and the rest of it, but mostly that ending scene of that big arc where they're at that Candyland, right? And he's giving the speech about phrenology, and he's getting more and more heightened, and he slams his hand down on the glass, and it's like, oh, did you know that was a real glass?
I was going to say, the funny
blood.
thing about that is that's real. The actress really freaked out when he wipes the blood on her
right.
face.
So that reaction is
like,
real, and that's an interesting thing, but it always seems like Leo leans a little too heavily on stuff like that.
Fair enough.
But I want to talk a lot about some of the great stuff involving Calvin Candy, because there is a lot of great stuff. I'll just throw one out there to start with, like the scene where he's talking to Steven alone for the first time, and you can tell that Calvin Candy is not the person who runs this plantation. Like Steven was Calvin's father's slave, right? And and his grandfather's slave, I believe, as well. Like, he goes back a couple generations. At this point, Steven knows way more about the business of that plantation, probably, than Calvin Candy does. Candy's like a little boy, running around doing all his phrenology and his slave fighting and all that kind of thing. And Steven is the practical one. Steven is maybe something deeper than a father figure even to Calvin Candy.
Well, that is one example for me of what makes that whole character so great, because there are multiple examples, of exactly that happening. You have Calvin Candy. He's the king of this plantation, King Candy, and
like from Candyland,
right? Just like Candyland. But Steven really knows what's going on, and then when he tries to tell Calvin, he says, "Steven, don't bother me," and then Steven says, "Meet me in the library," and he gets right up and goes. He knows. So you do get this sense that Steven is kind of the one in charge. He's the one that knows. You have Candyland itself, this giant, beautiful mansion, but it's filled with these horrors and atrocities that it's not a great thing. You have, Calvin Candy, who he wants to be seen as this, fancy rich man, and everything is Monsieur, and
when the lawyer stops him, he's like, "Do not speak French to him. He does not understand it. You'll embarrass him.
And it's all bullshit. And the same thing. He's well dressed, and he wears nice clothes, and he looks clean and fancy. And as soon as he smiles, you see his rotten, disgusting black teeth.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, he has blackened, rotting teeth in that movie. And it's just one more example of it's all bullshit. It's a front. Everything that he puts on is false because he's really a disgusting, horrible person who doesn't have the power or sophistication that he wants everyone to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one of my favorite things about that character was there are so many... I didn't notice all that the first time I watched the movie. There are so many subtleties in that, how that character is written and portrayed, that every time I watch it, I'm like, there you go. Another example of... Yep.
I think he's a great villain in a filmography full of great villains. He stands well with any of the other great Tarantino villains.
Also, the fact that he definitely has an incestuous relationship with his sister.
So creepy. That's the creepiest shit in the world.
It was by far for me. I was so mistaken. I was just going to say that's by far the most unsettling thing in that movie. That's far from the least unsettling thing in that movie. Holy fuck,
Far
Kurt.
from the least. Carry the two.
Yeah. There's some
oddly,
real bad
accurate.
shit in that movie.
Historically, it's weirdly accurate. For the time and for wherever they were meant to be. I can't remember specifically if they say where they were or not. But
it's Mississippi.
Was it
There's
Mississippi
that big title. The big title card. The word Mississippi runs across the screen.
It's like 5 minutes.
It gets a big laugh from me every time.
And it's all the way up all the way up here, but in 1860s, 1850s, 1840s, all through that time. That was super popular, which makes it even weirder because it's oddly factual.
Well, and
especially with big families with a lot of money.
Reference to royalty. No one is good enough except other people as rich as you. And if you're living in fucking Mississippi,
how am I going to find another woman on this plantation as charming and viable as my sister?
I guess I'll just use my sister.
I guess I'll just take my sister.
What else?
She just looks. You guys ever watch those old Aphex Twin music videos?
No.
She looks exactly like someone in an Aphex Twin music video. That's probably someone who's listening's favorite thing I've ever said.
So that I just think that there's so much that works with that character in that movie. We haven't really talked about Steven much, but
We haven't.
How disgusting and great is that character?
I think people were so afraid that he was going to be the typical Uncle Tom style character that they saw that, but he's really not. He's not. I think the bad thing about the character archetype of the Uncle Tom is it's almost saying that black people are less intelligent than white people because it's they just love their massa so much. Some of them are just gonna want to be next to their massa all the time. There's your Uncle Tom. That's not the case for Steven. Steven has cobbled together a power structure for himself within this corrupt system of slavery. And he doesn't want to let that go.
No, he sits somewhere higher up, oddly enough, considering his position, like you're saying before, knowing so much about the family business. To put it that way.
I did love, too, when, of all the people in Candyland related to, in relationships with Calvin, when Calvin gets murdered, it's Steven's face that the camera does that Tarantino zoom. It's a couple inches too close, and he just screams in horror as Calvin dies.
Yeah, and you kind of figure, he's seen this guy grow up.
Yeah.
What do you figure Calvin Candy's supposed to be, mid-30s, probably?
Yeah.
I think he's a little younger. I feel like the character comes across as a little younger than Leonardo DiCaprio actually was when he filmed it. Maybe that's wrong, maybe that's right, I don't know.
I think that's accurate.
No, he feels about right.
I got that vibe.
You definitely get the sense that Steven has a real affection for this bozo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a very real affection and, the power that he has because of him. I think it really is both. I think he really cares about what he has, and I think he cares about Calvin,
Yeah.
Because when Calvin's gone, that plantation moves to the sister.
Yeah.
That's who's run the plantation after that. And can Steven hold the same sway over her as he did over Calvin?
Yeah, definitely.
What's Steven's... I mean, obviously Steven gets killed, but Does he? No, he just gets kneecapped, I think, and then blown up.
Yeah, so he
all
gets blown up.
The end of that movie's pretty good.
Django pulls it off.
Yeah, he does. He somehow manages to fit in both a last stand, like a heroic and doomed last stand, and then also blow up the mansion later.
At the same time.
I like that. I like this movie.
It's a great movie.
Overall, pretty good movie.
Give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Yeah. I think that's about all I have for Django.
Yeah. Do we have any wrap up thoughts about this? Cave, anything?
No, not really. Wonderful movie, like we just said. I love it. It falls up there. It's either that or Inglourious for my top Tarantino movie, definitely.
No, just again, I'm thinking about scenes that I like. I just want to go through like
what's tough for me is like when we first started doing this, when we made our predictions about our favorites, I said what I have always said. I said Kill Bill is my personal favorite, but I think Pulp Fiction is a better film. And then we got to our Kill Bill episode, and I find myself thinking Kill Bill's pretty fucking perfect. Like,
Kill Bill might be better than
I
Pulp
think
Fiction.
I like it
I'm
more.
still struggling
I think
with
it's
this.
better than Pulp Fiction. Yeah. And then now I watch this, and I'm like, Django might be pulling up number 2. Like, for me anyway. Like, I think how culture has responded to Pulp Fiction might have more of an impression on me than how good Pulp Fiction actually is. Which doesn't mean I don't want to take anything away from Pulp Fiction.
It's a great movie.
Because it's a fantastic movie. And I mean, it's to say, like, I was going to say the worst thing ever. Never mind. I was going to say the most pretentious shit in the world.
No, do it.
I'll
try to one-up you.
I was going to say, I'm trying to make a comparison here saying that I don't like the Beatles, but I still have to respect what the Beatles did, and we wouldn't have what I do like if it weren't for the Beatles.
Fair enough.
And I hate to fucking compare Pulp Fiction to the Beatles.
Because Pulp Fiction's so much better.
Yeah, thank you. But I think that the result of what Pulp Fiction is might be more important than how good Pulp Fiction actually is. Sorry, everybody. I just fucking had to say it.
Send your hate mail.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get into this next episode.
Yeah.
The full review of all the Tarantino movies.
So, Hateful Eight.
All right.
This was the second time I've watched it. I've only watched it once. I saw Django in theaters, and I saw Inglourious Basterds in theaters. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I saw Kill Bill in theater or not. I don't remember. But this one I did not. It came out. I don't know why I didn't go see it. I think it was because I was living in an area where I didn't like the movie theater, or I didn't have much access to a movie theater. But I liked it a lot more this time than I did before. I think in a previous episode I said The Hateful Eight was just Reservoir Dogs with a budget, and Ben,
That's
you
exactly what you said.
that it was a remake of The Thing. It was Quentin Tarantino's remake of The Thing.
I don't think either of us was really right, but
so I'll add to that thought in a little bit. So what are your guys' initial thoughts about Hateful Eight?
Well, I'm kind of in the wagon of what you were saying before. I'm a little flipped from you because this is, of the three, this is the one I actually only saw once. Yeah. And probably left the least impression on me of the three. So I think if I were to watch it again, probably I'll catch nuances. I'll get a little better understanding of the whodunit aspect of the movie, because it's a super whodunit, cluey kind of.
Agatha Christie. Christie? What the fuck did I just say? Agatha Christie.
Agatha,
I know how
close.
to say names. Yeah, kind of. I got 90% of the way there and then kind of blew up. But...
Which meant... But yeah, it's super, murder mystery. It has that feel. And that for pros, for me, that's something I think is cool. I really like that he went about that. And I like that there's the moments of comedy that kind of break some of the awkward scenes where you're like, yeah, you gonna say that one more time? Yeah, okay, yep, you are. And then they add a joke, and you're like, all right, we're gonna make it.
He starts calling it a dingus, and then you're like, oh,
dingus.
Okay.
Oh, I guess that works. But I think it is. It's one of those ones that felt underwhelming, but if I watch it again, I think I'll probably appreciate it more. But I was with you, Kurt, in the whole. I'd rather watch I'd rather watch Reservoir Dogs. Yep. That's just me, but I see it. It's a Tarantino. I like the Tarantino aspect of the action, super action. Cinematography is great. They go super good angles for all the fucking gore that they throw out there. The awesome headshots are all angled perfectly.
Yeah, that Channing Tatum headshot's really good. It's really good. Super unexpected.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's not my favorite. In fact, it falls slowly towards the end for me. Mm-hmm. So you guys might have more on this one than me, but I don't know. It wasn't for the faint of heart. I know that much. Yeah. If you don't like gore and you don't like people getting shot in the head,
if you don't like people vomiting blood,
yeah, like across the room,
projectile bloodshot.
Yeah,
guys on the floor.
There's just a long. It feels like it's. Realistically, it's probably like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's like a Family Guy scene.
It feels like 5 minutes. Yeah, it's like Team America. Was the thing that I thought of in the bar. He just keeps vomiting, and it just like every time you think, oh, that has to be the last shot of Kurt Russell vomiting blood. He does it one more time. Yeah. He's like screaming. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So what about you? What are your what's your kind of thoughts on Hateful Eight?
I love this movie.
Okay.
I love it a lot. I think that it's like, I feel like the political messages of Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained, because I would say that Inglourious Basterds probably marks the first movie where Quentin Tarantino got really overtly political.
Yeah.
Like, he's saying, we forgot how bad Nazis are. We need another movie that shows us that Nazis are the villain. And then Django Unchained is saying, hey, you know who else was the villain that we don't talk about a lot? Slave owners, right?
Right.
That was kind of a little form of genetic, not Nazism, but genetic fascism. The idea with fascism being like, you have complete control over your populace. Slavery being, you have complete control over these people because you bought them. It's analogous to me, at least. You know, there's room for disagreement there, certainly. But to me, those two movies are all about getting that vengeance for people who've exerted control over others. Mm-hmm. And then Hateful Eight comes out, and like, there's a political message in there somewhere, but you have to dig.
You gotta find it.
You gotta dig to get at it. And at some point, it almost seems like it's about the complicated nature of America after the Civil War. But in the film, it's only, you know, right in the stuff that Minnie's haberdashery, the events that occur in Minnie's haberdashery. But you feel like those events are supposed to reflect on all the decades since the Civil War that we experienced and are experiencing to this day, you know? And it's saying none of this shit is simple.
No.
But bad people are bad people.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it. Well, one of the things. Also, to compare it to Reservoir Dogs real quick, because I think that's a good comparison as far as like the story goes. There's a very whodunit, like, hey, who's the betrayer? Who's the bad person in this room? Except, of course, in Reservoir Dogs, it's the same.
Right,
they're all bad people.
Yeah.
They're all criminals.
Yeah.
In Hateful Eight, they're all bad people again.
Right.
Like, there's not one single like good character in the movie. I don't think. You probably get closest with Major Warren. But then he looks real happy when he's killing that woman at the end.
Yeah.
But the
There's good reason.
Hey, I don't know about that. The comparison to Reservoir Dogs that I would make is that when he directed Res Dogs, I'm going to keep calling it that. No one can stop me. Quentin Tarantino was not nearly as advanced or as practiced a visual stylist as he is when he makes Hateful Eight. That's what puts it above Reservoir Dogs for me, is the, like you mentioned, the cinematography, the blocking, the fact that, like we were talking about a little bit before the podcast, it's experimental theater.
Yeah.
There's so many things in this movie that are all about manipulating the audience, and I just imagine watching it on a stage.
Yeah.
You know, and being right in there with the actors as they say these things to each other.
To a certain, you feel trapped in that room with them.
Yeah, they're stuck in that scenario.
It's oppressive. Anytime they open the door or you see out a window, there's just snow. It's just white out. It's like the Minnie's haberdashery has been uprooted and like placed in a void.
Wow, yeah.
So these people can work out their issues.
Yeah. So the thing that... The reason I think I took so much more away from this movie, after having watched it a second time now, and analyzing it more, I realized for myself the biggest difference with this movie to his other movies. We've talked about it a little bit before. Quentin Tarantino always pulls I say motivation from other types of film, whether
inspiration.
Yeah,
thank you. Whether it's a Japanese cinema or westerns, he's always using these other things and paying tribute to them. Grindhouse films, and I don't know much about grindhouse films. I don't know much about Japanese culture, and I don't know much about westerns. But I am a somewhat professional on everything that he borrowed from this movie.
Really?
And
interesting.
I know some shit about Quentin Tarantino movies. Mm-hmm. So when I watched this, I saw Reservoir Dogs with a budget, and that was all I could see the first time. But I also now see The Thing, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. I see literally this pulls so heavily from an episode of The Twilight Zone that it's like basically a remake of it. And that episode that I'm referring to it's from season 2 of The Twilight Zone.
Now you're talking my language, Curtis.
Yes. Will the real Martian please stand up? And what happens is I'm going to explain to you the plot of that episode, and you will think you're hearing the plot to the Hateful Eight. A group of travelers go to a diner, and then they realize there's a snowstorm, and there's too much ice pressed up against a bridge, and they're trapped in the diner. And then one of them realizes, there are 7 of us here, only 6 of us were on that bus. Which one of us doesn't belong here? And that, that's the Hateful Eight. When we're trapped in this building, one of us is not who they appear to be, and you have to figure out who that person is. So this was the first Tarantino movie I've watched where I really know about The Thing. I really know about Twilight Zone. I've watched a lot of Tarantino films. So I think everything that he had done up to this point was very impressive to me because I had nothing to compare it to. I didn't know what he was pulling from. I didn't know Pai Mei was a legend in Japan. I didn't know that Hattori Hanzo was
an actual ninja.
I didn't know any of that stuff. I don't know enough about westerns to know anything about these other films. So that once I realized that and I kind of saw what he was doing with this, I was really able to appreciate it more than I had been before that. It's hard, I think, to see those homages when you really know, like, you're referencing that. Is that as good as that? Because The Thing is pretty fucking good.
The Thing is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I like Hateful Eight just about as much as I like The Thing.
That's a tough call, Ben.
Yeah,
That's a tough call.
I'm
not making a call on a shitty podcast like this.
We gotta wait a couple decades to really make that argument. We gotta live with Hateful Eight for a little while before we can call it as good as The Thing, but it's in the running.
So, what do we think really worked or didn't work in that movie? I feel like is that a logical place for us to go? In Hateful Eight.
Yeah, let's start. I
don't know where to go after I just work myself into that corner.
Yeah, that's okay. What do we like about it, or not like about it?
Like I was saying before, I mean, one of the great things is I like that we continue on with the theme of Tarantino giving us what our bloody little souls like when it comes to. It's not revenge as much in this one. I mean, it might feel like it, but it's not revenge as much in it as it is just like there's a time and a place for him to pull the trigger, and he definitely goes for it every single time. So if you're into the whole action of Pulp Fiction, the action of Django, action of all those, this one will click with you in that aspect, definitely. And like I said before, the cinematography is super, super Tarantino, and I do love that about it. And I love that Samuel Jackson keeps coming back for this role of being like the ultimate guy in the corner, just sitting there for a little bit, not saying much, and then going full dialogue with people.
He's the detective. He's Inspector Poirot.
Yeah.
Is that guy's name? I have no idea who the guy is.
Sometimes I just laugh and agree so I sound smart. Sometimes I know what you're talking about,
Sometimes
man.
I just say words so I'll sound smart. We're all in the same boat.
Yeah, it happens.
So I think, for me, I hate to say this, I think the first half of the movie is considerably better than the second half. And what I love about the first half is, what a film to choose to use those 70mm film cameras, because nothing can make you feel the isolation of that film, like the widest wide-angle shot in the last 50 years showing snow.
Yeah.
Just a white wall with one horse cart
Going
pulling
across.
up through the middle of it.
Yeah.
You get the feeling that, well, I mean, it's Wyoming. Wyoming is still our most sparsely populated state.
Yep.
By like a long shot. Don't like a couple 100,000 people live in that whole state?
I don't know much about Wyoming.
All I know is there's not many people there.
Not a lot.
It must have been even more so back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, you get the feeling, like you said, there's just nobody.
Empty.
If they need help, there is
Too bad.
nobody.
And
They
I mean,
are secluded.
and regardless of that, they're trapped by this snowstorm, and that's one of my favorite parts of that film is you have these characters and you're slowly introduced to one more, and you're like, who is this person? You know, like, can I trust them? You know, you don't know, and then they all meet up together, and the music. I think it's like an accordion. There's just this like winding accordion that just like channels the desperation as the storm is closing in on them, and they're trying to lead ropes to the outhouse and lead ropes to the stables, and you know, every time the hilarious scene of everybody yelling about the door every fucking time they open.
You gotta hammer it shut.
You gotta put two.
One's not enough.
It's just hilarious, but
You gotta nail it in.
When they pound, there's always like 8 nails that go into the wood. It's this like a coffin, you know. Like
that's true. That's an interesting point.
They're trapped in this wooden box.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't mean to sound that smart. Kudos.
You did it.
No.
No.
Yeah.
You keep saying
Had a good thought.
You keep saying you're not smart, Curtis. Eventually, I'm just gonna start piping up every time you say some shit like
Well,
that.
I feel like the key to being
Curtis, you're smart.
The key to being smart is like, I'm gonna drop some fucking science on these guys when I say this. I say shit, and then I'm like, hey, that was a real thought. Like, I like this movie. Like, and I think that the first half, and literally the point I think that I fall off is sometimes there are points. I think I mentioned this in the last episode. There can be points in a movie where it slaps you in the face. You're like, oh yeah, I'm watching a Tarantino movie. I have to. This dialogue is letting me know. As soon as that narrator jumps into the mix, you're like, oh yeah, this is a Tarantino movie.
Because you're hearing Tarantino's voice.
Yeah.
Is it his voice?
That is him.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
And it just like it's just kind of cheesy, but it works, and you're like, that's the thing he would do. Like,
it puts you in the exact right frame of mind for what he wants that part of the movie to be.
And I think the second half doesn't pay off as well for me as, you know, because you have this like who done it, but then when you watch it again, it's funny. I watched it the second time, and I was like, well, clearly those fucking guys are the traitors. The ones they don't show the rest of the movie until they say they're the traitors. Like, you don't realize
the hangman.
Yeah, the hangman and Michael Madsen's character.
Michael Madsen and Senior Bob.
Yeah, you know,
Bob.
The general and Samuel Jackson, they command so much of the performance in the room that you don't even notice that you haven't fucking thought about half the characters for an hour, you know?
Right.
So when I watched it again, I was like, I'm going to look for clues that those
That's a
guys
good point.
are the... And then I'm like, there are no clues because those guys aren't even in the movie.
There,
Like,
yeah.
That should have been a giveaway. But, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I will... Do you guys have anything to add to my ramblings? Because my brain's going to other places now.
Let me see. What do I really like about this movie? I love the opening shot. That's one thing for me. The shot of Christ.
Yeah, the stone crucifix.
The statue of Christ on the crucifix, and it's such a close shot that you have no sense of scale. And then it just pulls out
all the way back.
And like Ennio Morricone's score plays, just pulses in your mind the whole time. Same guy who did the music for The Thing.
Yeah.
By the way, fascinating fact. And it just pulls and it like circles it, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And eventually it frames the stagecoach off in the distance. But it feels so long, but I'm just like I'm enraptured by it the whole time, watching it just slowly spin and watching it slowly give you a sense for how big.
Well, it's a huge pan.
Yeah, it's a crazy pan.
I think that
it's the best introduction to the aspect ratio that they used for this movie as well. Super wide, gives you so much information.
I think Hateful Eight is the first time Tarantino filmed parts of the movie too. He was the director of photography.
Oh, really?
He was the DP for Death Proof.
Was he?
In its entirety.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think it was... I forget what the name of the cinematographer was. But, yeah, I don't actually know what that process looked like.
One thing about for the method of filming with the 70mm, one thing that I noticed, I obviously now I can't pull the exact moment, but there were moments where the shots were so wide. Oh, I know which one of them was when... the criminal lady was playing...
Daisy Domergue
was playing guitar.
Oh, yeah.
This scene is so wide, you literally have two shots in the same shot, and it would go left and right, and it felt so huge, like that you had this... You could see a complete scene on the left side, and then it would go back to the foreground, and you would see a complete scene.
Other one.
Like,
it's insane.
It's impressive.
That's the thing that I in my reading... I came across some reviews that were like, it was a waste to film this in 70mm. Why would he ever do this? 70mm is for landscapes.
No, that makes so much sense, though.
The fact of, it communicates the fact that they are in here together. Because you don't have to cut away. You can see half of the whole building.
Yeah.
Right? From any given angle, generally. And it gives you that sense. They're all in here together.
Yeah.
More directly, maybe, than it would have been able to had he had to, like, oh, now you see what John's doing. Yeah. Now you see Daisy with the guitar again, and you cut back and forth a couple times. Instead, just being able to manipulate that focus and give you all of that in that one shot while she's giving that great performance. And then, the final, the lyrics where she changes to say that he'll be dead and she's going to get to Mexico. So good.
I think that's one thing, and I agree with you. And that it show. There are times where it shows half of the whole, room, and you're just like, you're like, wow, this is so huge. This doesn't make sense for a movie. But then you stop. It might not make sense for a movie, but if you're a person in that room, you can adjust your focus to two different people. And if I'm looking here, I'm not going to see the person, but they're going to be in my periphery. So it makes a lot of sense, I think. And then you're not going to really push the factor of how secluded you are unless you show more area than scene. You have to. You just have to show... Like, when you're outside of the cabin... I mean, it's not a cabin, but whatever. When you're outside of it, and you see, like you're saying with the scene where you see it just switch back and forth, foreground, background, it proves to you, like we've continuously fucking hit this hammer with this, but it's huge. You're lost. You're out in the middle of nowhere. These 7 people or 8 people need each other, and they need to figure out who's what and why fast. Because this is not a good situation to be in with how cold it's about to get, and then it starts to build, and you see the severity grow.
They keep saying, we're going to be in here for 2 days together.
Yeah.
I don't think they make it through, 24 hours. I don't think they make it, through the first night. I'd have to go in and watch it again to really get the timeline.
See a time frame.
Yeah,
it's not long.
I don't think... Do they sleep in that
They
movie?
don't sleep. Also, they never go to the bathroom that they lead a line out to. So.
Right, and there's that long extended sequence of those guys, pounding in the fucking things.
But
so that whole movie technically could have taken place in 8 hours.
2 hours,
right. I think that's what's another thing that makes it kind of like a stage play. There's good unity. That's good unity of place, unity of action, all that stuff. There's not all these cutaways. There is the flashback, of course. There's the flashback that shows us what the members of the Domingre gang did to set it up.
Anytime it pulls necessarily. It's not like we'll unimmerse you for a moment just to throw some shit I wanted to get all crazy with. I think it's it's a necessary pull for the most part.
Totally. And it would still work as a stage play, right? You just have to have the person saying this happened before the other stuff.
So what about things that don't work for you guys? Is there any big drawbacks in this movie? Because I feel like I have one.
Felt lengthy and slightly wordy. Other than that, it is
3 hours
enjoyable.
long. It's 2 hours and 48 minutes long.
It felt like it could have been a 2-hour, 15-minute movie.
To me,
but...
all the dialogue works.
Yeah.
But it's the action stuff at the end, and it's not even quite right to call it action. It's not like action movie action. It's like once people start shooting each other, it doesn't have that as much impact to me, other than the point where Major Warren shoots was it General Smithers?
Yeah.
That's not his name, but Bruce Dern.
Yeah.
That whole sequence really works for me. And if the rest of the movie had been like that, it almost feels like a little bit of a cop-out. Like, like, hey, it's my first movie I've ever written, and I don't know how to end it, so they all die.
Yeah.
Kind of the Reservoir Dogs.
That is true. It feels a little bit like, I'm going to squeeze a little bit of Tarantino in at the end, a little bit of action. Okay, and movie.
I mean, to me, the thing that characterizes Tarantino movies for me more than anything, like we keep kind of talking about his hallmarks, and I think violence is a big hallmark for people. But to
violence and vengeance,
To me, the thing that characterizes Tarantino movies is the dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I think that's where he's strongest.
Yeah.
Other than Kill Bill, where he directs some pretty great action sequences. The rest of the stuff is a supporting. You get the characters through the dialogue, and then you kind of see some actions that complicate the things that they say, or that reflect the things that they say in different ways, and that gives you a little more character. But the characters are in the dialogue for me. So when Hateful Eight gets so far away from meaningful dialogue, and towards the end gets more into like, well, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah.
Right? I feel like for the last 30-ish minutes of that movie, I don't feel like I'm learning new things about the characters.
Yeah, that's fair.
Until that very end, which kind of sort of redeems it for me because it's so brash and so bizarre. Like the fact that they read that Lincoln letter out loud at the very end.
I do
like
cool
touch.
I guess the character growth of the sheriff when he
Mannix
when he chooses to kill Domergue, and you kind of have this like, this guy's a real greasy fuck, that's how like everything he does is just like, God, you are a piece of shit, dude. Like, and his claim to fame is that his father was the guy who refused to admit they lost the war.
Mannix's Marauders.
And he chooses to take the side of a black North side. God damn it, you idiot. Union soldier over these people that were gonna, a white person that was going to pay him to look the other way. So I thought that was nice.
It's really interesting. I have a slightly different read on it than that, I think, but I like yours, and I totally see yours. But the way I've instinctively taken that is as kind of a feminist statement about how these guys hate each other. Not as much as they hate an uppity woman, Like
I actually didn't think about it like that.
A black man and a white man in the aftermath.
And a woman
in the aftermath of the Civil War will still come together to kill a woman, like brutally, like hang her from the rafters. It's a very disturbing scene, and the look of awe and just like joy that goes onto Major Warren and Sheriff Mannix's faces as they're lifting her and watching her like struggle and flail as she dies is very unsettling to me. And then of course the fact that they read the Lincoln letter to each other afterwards.
I think the only thing in the film that doesn't work for me is it's because it's the dingus thing. It literally, it's not that the reason I don't like it is just that it takes me right out of the movie. It's maybe it's supposed to. I don't know. I just feel like I was like, what the fuck am I watching? That was like that I had that thought the second time too. I was just like, this goes on for way too fucking long. Like, this is weird. What the fuck is happening?
Is it the fact that he says dingus, or is it the entire speech?
I don't know what aspect. I don't think, I'm not like, how much should I say that? It's not simply that it's the word dingus. And it's also, I'm not like disgusted by the fact that he tells the story of the things that he did to this, general's son or whatever. I don't know. I don't think I'm so off put by any aspect of that I don't think it belongs in the movie. But for some reason, maybe that I can't even explain myself, it just removed me from the movie. It reminded me that I was watching an over-the-top Quentin Tarantino movie, when up to that point I had been sucked in and I was trapped in that room with those characters, and then at that moment I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Like it removed me from my immersion in the movie.
What's your take on this, Cave? I'm interested. This is one of the most interesting parts of the movie to talk about. Because no matter who watches this movie, everyone remembers that speech at the end. No one's like, wait, when did that happen?
What dingus scene?
What dingus scene? I don't remember that.
For me, I think it's just... So for most of it being super lengthy, me saying that some of the dialogue was a little chunky, I think this is one of the fair points where, as much as it felt envelope pushy, like it was meant to be like, oh, look what happened with the boy, look what I did, look what happened here in my life, look at how I came to this fucking place. I think that the thing I like about it is for me, it felt necessary. It seemed, like I said, it was definitely pushing an envelope of like, let's see how far I can go and make these people kind of a little squeamish and a little sit off to the side and go, did he say it? Did he go there? Is that what he did to...
Dingus, huh?
Dingus,
okay,
huh?
Dingus.
Okay, fuck it. Well, we're going here. But I think you need to go there to kind of pack the punch that the movie's trying to do ultimately in the end with the whole... Yeah. Like you said, after the hanging, after the reading of the letter, you kind of stop and you go, okay, this makes sense, I guess.
What did I just watch? Yeah. Do you guys think he's telling the truth?
I was just going to say that as that unfolds, you come back to that and you're like... And it's weird because they go back and they show who kind of started poisoning things, and they go back to that scene and you hear part of it again. True. And at that point, you know enough to be like, that might be bullshit. Like,
I feel like that the dialogue, when they go back to it, might not actually appear in the original speech also.
Oh, really?
Like, did you get that sense? Like, it seems like a summary of the speech that he's saying.
Yeah.
He's like, your boy, my black dingus. Like, I don't think the exact
He's got
phrase.
the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Your boy, my black dingus.
Let's see, white boy in the snow, made him walk. Black dingus, sucked it hard. Yes, I've hit all the points. I don't know. It might actually literally appear.
I don't
in the
know.
speech, but
maybe it's like
it sounds as though it's supposed to be representative. It sounds as though it's supposed to be a reminder to the audience, like, hey, you remember this?
Well, maybe it's like in Pulp Fiction where the lines from the diner are different at the end than
they were at the beginning. Yeah,
yeah. I think it's specifically Amanda Palmer. Is that her name?
Mm. Yes,
yes.
It is.
I think it's specifically Honey Bunnies or Pumpkin. Yeah, the woman's line. Holy shit! This was edit that out.
Speaking of which, how fucking funny is it that it was fucking Timothy Roth was the fucking traitor again? Like,
Tim Roth. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And I love Tim Roth's character because he's so loquacious and he has like all these high-minded ideals about justice versus frontier justice. And then when you see what he's actually like when he's not playing that character, the accent's totally different.
Yeah,
he has a much like lower class sounding accent, and B, he's not loquacious like that. That was bullshit. He was playing a character. It turns out a really easy way to play a character is to pretend you're wordier than you actually are. Right? You can say a lot of stuff that makes it sound like you're saying the true things about yourself.
Yeah,
but you're not. Have I just given away my secret?
No. And you don't even have to say it quickly because you can like pretend you're letting people have time to process the smart things you're saying.
Right. Well, really, you're just having time to process what you should say next.
What's the most intelligent way I can phrase this?
Yeah. I definitely don't think that Warren is telling the truth with that story. I think he's trying to make a point. I think he has picked up that this guy cares about his son. That's a point of weakness in the general psyche. And he's trying to torture him into shooting at him. And I think he's also trying to make kind of a metaphorical point about the betrayal that the general committed when he killed the black POWs.
Yes.
Because he kind of Warren kind of wraps up the speech by saying like, he sucked my black dingus and I didn't even give him the thing that I said I would give him. Yeah. Just like those prisoners of war trusted you to treat them fairly, to uphold the social contract. Even in war, you're supposed to uphold one social contract. But because they were black, you didn't. Yeah. You can say all the shit you want about not having had enough food. And he even says we had neither the food nor the whatever, nor the inclination to to feed those men and keep them as prisoners, so they slaughtered them instead. And,
Right.
and I think the whole point of that whole speech is for Warren, like I said, A, to goad the general, but B, to make that point. That was a profound betrayal.
Yeah. Leaves no questions asked after that. You go, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
Gotcha.
I don't really have much else.
Yeah.
The way the setting grows over the course of the movies is interesting. Not in that Minnie's haberdashery grows, but the first 45 minutes of the movie are in a fucking stagecoach.
Yeah.
Like it's a
just the
series.
talking.
It's a series of dialogues that occur in a stagecoach, with like fake-looking projection backgrounds behind it, like intentionally fake-looking.
Yeah.
Like he could have made those look better.
I was
If
gonna
he
say, it's
wanted
like in
to.
Pulp Fiction, they're black and white backgrounds. when you're
Like
driving.
exactly like in Pulp Fiction or in Kill Bill, they
Yep.
do the same thing at some point. But the way it kind of foreshadows the way these characters are going to interact in Minnie's haberdashery within the stagecoach, how like Mannix like sidles over to the side of the stagecoach when you all got me talking politics.
Yeah.
Like that. In the same way that a character, when they get out of their element in Minnie's haberdashery, might walk to the side.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've spoken a little too much. What about Michael Madsen's outfit? Joe Gage, the way Joe Gage is dressed.
The most colorful cowboy in Wyoming.
Yeah,
you've
like
ever
a
seen.
like a cartoon cowboy, like a child's drawing of a cowboy.
I loved his performance in that. He's just very subtle and really kind of. It was just one of those things where it was, you didn't need to do that, Michael Madsen.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be you, but I'm glad you did it. Like,
Yeah.
He's like Michael Madsen, I think, is doing a great performance, but the character of Joe Gage is giving a terrible performance.
Yeah.
I don't seem like the type that would visit my mother. Well, I am.
Yeah.
Or like giving terrible, lying just bald-facedly, like not even really doing that good a job. Yeah, I'm writing my life story.
The only other, this might be better to talk about in the recap episode, but one thing I did notice that, and I guess it's a good thing, and not to say that it's, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Usually when Tarantino, not to say Tarantino, usually in a movie when you have couples or married couples, usually you have white people with white people and like black people are with black people. Usually in a lot of TV shows that you don't see a lot of like
Interracial.
interracial
Yeah,
relationships.
and if they are there, they are the point.
Yeah, and I really love, and this we kind of talked about it before, with Bonnie, the Bonnie situation. Tarantino has lots of
Interracial.
Interracial.
I don't know if that's the
multiracial.
preferred nomenclature.
It was at one
Multi-ethnic,
point.
Interracial relationships. He puts them in his movies frequently and never
Yeah.
addresses it, which is great. Which is the way it fucking should
That's
be.
the way.
Like
That's how you normalize something.
Yeah.
but
Because it's not that long ago, like in the
Yeah.
70s, that shit raised eyebrows.
I mean, Jackie
Yeah.
Brown touched on it. Pulp Fiction touched on it. Hateful Eight touched on it.
Yeah, Minnie and
Sweet Dave.
and Sweet Dave.
Are black and white,
I
respectively.
wish someone would call me Sweet Dave someday. That's such a good nickname.
I'm worried going into that we're at 2 hours and 12 minutes. This is getting bad. I'm grasping at straws. I think we might try to succinctly wrap this
Okay,
up.
can we? One more thing about Hateful Eight.
Can we go back to Inglourious Basterds?
Go back to Bastards. I have more things to say.
Yes.
One more thing about Hateful Eight. It would be a tragedy for us to talk about that movie without specifically pointing out how great Jennifer Jason Leigh's performance as Daisy Domergue is.
Oh my god.
Especially in the first half.
Yeah.
Like and you recognize why she acts the way she does, and hell, you recognize why Kurt Russell's character acts the way he does. They both think they're in the clear.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell's like, I got this bitch
got
on
this.
lock.
Yeah.
I'm taking her into Red Rock. She's gonna get hanged. I'm gonna get my money. I maintained my
It's
name,
over.
the Hangman. I safely brought in another dangerous criminal.
Yeah.
She's thinking, we're gonna stop at Minnie's haberdashery. There's a blizzard coming. My people are there because they planned it, and I'm gonna be fine. So he gets to act like a brash asshole. She
Yeah.
gets to act like a psychopath.
Yeah.
And she gives like there's one shot of her that I love. It's right after Kurt Russell hits her in the face. He like elbows
Which
her
time?
in the face.
Yeah, which of the
First one.
50?
The first one. The one that bizarrely when I saw this movie in the theater, got a laugh.
Yeah.
Like a big, like the whole crowd united in their hatred of that woman.
I feel like you just don't expect it, and that's kind of where
He
the
kind
thing
of cranks into her in that one.
Yeah,
You're just
really,
like, oh, okay.
He really slams her. But then right after that, she looks at Warren and she like licks her lips.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then she like looks out the window and the camera just holds on her face for way longer than it needs
you would
to.
expect, yeah.
And you get to see not the way she's acting when she's trying to make an impression. You get to see the way she is when she's just there. She's just existing. She's looking out the window of this stagecoach. She's just a normal woman.
My favorite scene with her, that just reminded me of it, was when Warren gets kind of backed into the wall and admits that the letter is bullshit. Everyone is so disappointed. She just starts laughing. She's like, "Good one, Warren!" Like,
yeah.
You fucking lied to everybody.
Yeah.
Looking so good.
She loves it because Kurt Russell is
so disappointed,
crestfallen about the letter being fake. Like, he had invested so much of himself personally into that letter. All right, we've talked about Daisy Domergue.
Yes.
Are there any other characters that we really want to specifically call out as being like high points?
I don't think so. I mean, it was weird he chose Channing Tatum to be in that, but I mean,
cool.
he was fine.
It was cool. Yeah, his accent
out.
was a little goofy.
Yeah.
But I think overall it was just... I walked away from that. My final thought is I walked away from that liking it a lot more than I did the first time.
I'm glad to hear that.
I might watch it again. I didn't watch any of these Tarantino movies again after we reviewed them, but that one I'm like, I could watch that one again.
It's going to be a couple weeks until we record our wrap up.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to watch most of these movies again in that time.
We'll have to figure out how we want to approach that. But
yeah, I've got some ideas.
We really got to wrap this up.
Yeah,
so
let's get out of here. Let's make sure this isn't longer than the Kill Bill episode.
First things first. Thank you, Cave, for being on the podcast. You have a podcast, Into the Cave, and you have another podcast, right? What's the name of the other one?
The other one is Cavecast.
Cavecast. Into the Cave and Cavecast. So thank you for being on the show. You guys should all go check out the Cave's other podcast. At the very least, you can listen to the one that I was on.
Yeah,
right.
Are you here because you love Curtis? Go listen to the episode in the cave that he was on. What are you guys on? Like episode 50? You said
47. Yeah,
47.
Yeah,
coming up on 50.
Yeah.
We're babies.
That's established. I know these guys have merch.
Yeah, I was looking at their merch.
Yeah. Someday, Ben. Someday. We're gonna merch and then Farmington first. Yes. Is it desperate if we apply to, if we like say, have you heard of Ben and Curt till it hurts? Signed Curt.
Anonymous.
Anyway, if you like me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CurtCake5K. You can listen to this and my other podcast at Black Gold on iTunes or Stitcher. And
if you like me, then friend me on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, I'm receptive.
If you like Ben, then you're in the place to be.
If you have more than 6 friends and you're not like clearly a robot, I'll probably friend you on Facebook. So go ahead, just put yourself out there.
So make sure you have more on your profile than one picture of you in your underwear, and you created your profile this month. Otherwise, Ben will not believe you're a real person.
Definitely not. I've started Snapchatting again recently.
There you go.
That's fun.
I don't even do that.
Not relevant to any of these people.
All right.
Friend me on Snapchat.
So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for listening. We will be back next time for our final Quentin Tarantino episode for like a couple months anyway, until we do it again.
Or till he puts out another movie. Like, what are we gonna do when the 9th Quentin Tarantino?
We'll be able to do it
comes
right
out?
and do one episode,
one fucking movie. We'll have to. I don't even know.
We'll figure it out.
I'm so scattered whenever.
So next time we're kind of going to do a recap. We're going to try to agree on our ranking of all 8 Quentin Tarantino movies from worst to first. I believe we have another guest.
We have another guest, hopefully. I mean,
hopefully
not like hopefully.
Yeah,
we've talked to her.
Yeah,
she's coming on.
That'll be exciting.
I have some other ideas. I want to do some superlatives.
Okay.
About these movies.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Like best performance in a Quentin Tarantino movie, or top 3 best performances, or like best death. Best death was one that I thought of. Best line. We can come up with a whole fucking clutch of these things.
So, are we good?
Yeah,
we're good.
We're good.
All right. So thanks for listening. We will be back next time.
Bye.
See you later.
Peace.